glad that we have the planning commission here as an occasion of their volunteer work for their position in city government. And in that regard, I want to make a shout out before we really start, is that Asnup Jorgensen here, who has been on the planning commission as the mayor's appointee for a substantial amount of time, and a person of much knowledge about planning, much of which I appreciate from his home in Denmark and Copenhagen, which I had the pleasure to have the American Institute of Architects Traveling Fellowship to go and visit, and glad he's been with us. He's leaving as of tonight, and he's going to be replaced by Steve Davis, who's sitting next to that, and one from Barnet, who is now in the mayor's office and in a role in the mayor's office related to economic development. And we welcome Stephen to our meeting. And as you know, this topic that we're going to have first up tonight, we've had many meetings about, and much excitement about. And tonight is a key meeting, important meeting, as that after we do a judgment tonight, the next step of this would be at the Board of Health. And so tonight, after many meetings about this, public hearings, we'll have a short public hearing that will be a portion of this. Gentleman that just took off his baseball hat, I know wants to be in the queue to be up on the public hearing. But with that, let's welcome Steve. Let's give a round of applause. Madam Chairman.
Right. I guess we have not yet called it into order, so please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Present.
Alderwoman Sanye, online, not present. Commissioner Bradley,
Present.
Commissioner Fowler, Commissioner Garmendia, Commissioner Hubman, Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Miller,
Present.
Commissioner Williams, Chair Boaz, and Vice Chair Banton.
Present.
And you have a quorum.
Once. All right, technically, the next thing on the agenda is the introduction of Steve Davis. I think that Don has already done that to a certain extent, but I would love it if you just introduce yourself.
Yeah, again, my name is Stephen Davis, 8 days in on the job as the new Chief Economic Development Officer with the City of St. Louis. Prior to that, it's been 5.5 years with the St. Louis Development Corporation. So as Don mentioned, I'm intimately familiar with PDA and, working with the great staff that they have. I'm excited to work with all the commissioners here over the, course of the next several years, hopefully. So again, thank you for the warm welcome. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, next, the approval of the minutes. First, for the May 13 meeting, do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved by Commissioner Banton and just second was by Fowler. Commissioner Fowler. Roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Abstain.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Banton,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz.
Aye.
And motion passes.
All right, next for the approval of minutes for the May 18th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve?
Second?
Previous roll.
Call for previous roll. Any objections?
I have to abstain.
Oh, yeah.
I was not there.
See, all right, do I have a second?
I think there's one revision needed.
Okay.
I don't think I'm mentioned. And I was there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let me get your copy.
I don't have my
Okay, never
copy.
mind.
Yeah.
Any other revisions? Big moment.
You were not on there. I was not present on 13th. The 18th, I was present.
Aaron, you're there.
Yeah, but if you go down here to the vote, I'm not mentioned.
All right.
What'd you vote?
Well, I was just open to discussions.
So.
How would you-
Let's see.
Okay, so the minutes need to be updated to show that Commissioner Williams voted to open the public hearing Is that the vote
Yeah.
we had?
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
I did that.
Are you guys discussing something to be revised in the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can't hear you down here at all.
Oh, sorry,
You want to say it?
but I should
Yeah.
state what your motion is.
I was just making a motion to include my name in the move to open the public hearing about data centers. My name was omitted.
All right, so you move to approve with that
Amendment.
amendment.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
do
you.
I have-
Second.
All right. Could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Swite, sorry, Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubin,
Abstain.
Commissioner Davis,
Abstain.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Banton,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz.
Abstain.
And the motion passes with 3 abstentions.
Excellent. Okay, we have 3 items tonight, only one of which is an action item. We have had some very significant opportunities for public comment on the subject of the data centers. And I want to thank the public for all of the comments that we've received. We've even received a packet that arrived today. For those, did you want to go through this aspect of the,
I can.
okay, I'm going to turn that over to Miriam.
Yeah, good evening, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Miriam Keller. I'm City Planning Executive for General Planning and Design, the City of St. Louis. I'm going to introduce this item and then explain how we're going to handle the public hearing tonight. And the intent of that, by the way, is just to allow for the commission to move into discussion and deliberation relatively earlier in the meeting so that they can move forward with a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen this evening. And also, I was reminded by my colleague that in the new and improved room here, the mics are very sensitive. So just letting actually everybody in the room know that the room mics do pick up most commentary. So just remain aware of that. So as Chair Boaz was referencing, the commission has had kind of extensive sort of refinement of these regulations and also extensive opportunity for public testimony at the February 11th hearing, written comment subsequent to that and before that a little bit at the May 18th hearing with extensive public comment and then written comment following that. And so here we are at June 10th, reviewing some final changes, technical corrections, further documentation of the rationale behind some of the recommendations. We'll have, actually, we've decided limited opportunity for additional public testimony this evening, and I'll discuss how we're going to do that in a second. And the goal is to discuss and vote tonight to advance regulations to the Board of Aldermen. During the legislative process, there will be additional opportunity for public comments and written testimony. So I just want to assure the public that this will not be your final opportunity, and there will also be additional opportunity for debate and amendment at the Board of Aldermen. So tonight, what the commission has decided to do is to hold an additional limited amount of public testimony. We'll have both in-person and virtual opportunities for testimony. And our request is to please sign up either in person at the sign-up sheet by the entrance or via the Zoom chat. And we will be capping the public testimony at 15 minutes this evening to allow discussion and debate to proceed. And we'll be doing that on a first come, first served basis, alternating between in-person and online speakers to try to be as kind of fair to different modes of participation in this process, but also to allow the commission to proceed with discussion. And each speaker, as we have before, will be limiting each speaker to 2 minutes. Any questions or clarifications from the chair?
No.
Okay.
No, I just want to make sure people understand that right now they should be signing up online or they should be.
Correct. Yeah, now's the time to indicate your interest in providing testimony. Okay. So I do have a presentation tonight to overview some of the comment that the commission has received since the most recent meeting on May 18th, provide a summary of the changes and research conducted since May 18th, and also I have a slide outlining some of the potential amendments that have been put forward by some of our commissioners, and then we'll have the brief public comment section before moving into discussion. So summarizing the comments since May 18th, this is a reminder of the very, high-level framework presented at the May 18th meeting. So there were 3 categories of data centers established. The first, micro, a carve out for server rooms, but micro data centers being smaller than 10,000 square feet and using with a maximum power demand lower than 5 megawatts. And they would be allowed in industrial districts as well as downtown and large commercial nodes. Standard data centers would be larger than micros, but less than 30 megawatts. And the approach would be to allow those in industrial districts and downtown. But there would be also a high level of review and scrutiny and high standards for standard data centers. Major data centers would be those using a maximum power demand more than 30 megawatts. And the approach would be to allow those only in the most intensive industrial districts, have a very high level of review and scrutiny, very high standards, and require a public impact agreement that would be approved both by the Board of Public Service and by the Board of Aldermen. So a sort of broader process of consideration for those major data centers. There were also many other standards related to distancing that were tailored to size, and many standards related to backup generators and so on. Those have been refined, but some of the feedbacks and suggestions we received on that new framework presented on May 18th, there were some appreciated elements and some concerns and suggestions raised. So I'll quickly summarize this. I think the public did appreciate the level of adjustment from the primary or the initial draft. Still appreciate the differentiation of data centers by type, a shift to no by right in any district, and the comprehensiveness of the regulations. But many members of the public still wanted to see a ban on large data centers or potentially all data centers. There was an interest expressed by many in a resident consent mechanism, and that is something staff researched to see what is possible so we could offer some guidance to the commission there. There was a concern enforcement won't be sufficient, and a desire to see more teeth, a desire to see a mechanism to hold existing data centers or recent approvals accountable to these same regulations. Some participants thought we went too far with micro data centers and wanted to see them by right in at least the K unrestricted district, if not also the J industrial district. A desire to add standard urban design guidance to avoid big windowless boxes, and you'll see some adjustment there with some support from a member of our commission. On the subject of the 30 megawatt threshold between standard and major data centers, which was one of the most significant changes between the initial and second draft of the regulations, a lot of people appreciated greater scrutiny that would apply to more projects. Some expressed, though, that this new threshold is too strict and suggesting we return it to 75 megawatts or to a new 50 megawatt level. So that was feedback received. The buffer requirement, people expressed that that 600-foot increase from 300 feet was an improvement in the eyes of many. Some were concerned that spacing is too much. Some were concerned that spacing is too little. And there's also concern that that method of measurement that we had used in the language had a level of sort of arbitrariness to it. So we did refine that, and we'll explain that in a moment. A little bit more feedback here. Folks appreciated some of the additional environmental protections related to e-waste recycling. Some generator protections that we did strengthen those. The upfront reports required, bird safe lighting. We are now a bird city, if that's correct. More concerns and suggestions, though, that an interest in prohibiting fossil fuel generators as backup generators, prohibiting data centers in floodplains as a potential environmental protection, and potentially instituting a cap on the number of data centers. On the subject of utility or consumer protections, people liked some of the approach with agreements with the Water Division. There's an interest in adding a kill switch provision, which is something we researched and happy to answer questions there. Transparency, there's an interest in prohibiting NDAs. I think that largely falls outside of the province of zoning. On renewable energy, some wanted to see an upfront 100% renewable energy requirement. Others expressed that even the 10-year 100% requirement is not attainable. The renewable energy credit provision as described was maybe not tailored to achieve the intent. So we have revised that. And a suggestion that we more explicitly prohibit nuclear as a renewable source. And we have taken that comment. With the public impact agreements, there's appreciation for its inclusion, but some concern that it was too ambiguous. We fleshed out the criteria for what should be included in that. And then the technical details, I think the server room carve out was appreciated. But there were concerns about impacts on existing data centers lease up and a concern about power increase triggering new compliance standards. And so we've done some research on both of those fronts and tried to adjust accordingly to resolve legal concerns. So since May 18th, staff has been working to refine the regulations, and this has been the scope of our exploration. We've not explored very significant policy diversions. We were tweaking. And so the scope was we tried to address technical comments that would help us strengthen the policy intent, address unintended impacts of the regulations as initially written. We did a great deal of research to avoid or resolve legal concerns. There was some refinement of the use table and addition of design standards and also some technical refinement there. We did evaluate whether there's a legally defensible mechanism within zoning for either requiring public consent or for capping megawattage of a data center in addition to capping the physical size. We explored other mechanisms to cap intensity. We did some more, I think, documentation of the rationale for specific regulations just to strengthen their basis and expanded slightly the fiscal analysis. A commissioner expressed interest in seeing a little bit more of that beyond just the property tax analysis. So there were 9 key types of changes, and I'll walk through 2 through 9 quickly. But number 1, I think it's just a general note that there was lots of language cleanup and refinement throughout, but only 2 through 9 represent significant changes. So the first was a change to the use table. I think thinking a little bit more about downtown and the approach there, and this was a staff recommendation that perhaps that standard data center need not be permitted in the L district, which is the zoning district immediately surrounding the arch grounds. Just in light of the planning intent to really preserve opportunities for inviting active uses that reinforce the arch grounds as a regional, national, and international destination. I think some of the recent conversation about the opportunities to invest in the riverfront brought this to our minds, and we thought maybe this was an appropriate change. I do want to take a step back and kind of compare the use table where we are now to where we were before the executive order and where we are under the executive order. Before the executive order, when data centers were reviewed as warehousing or office, data centers of any size would have been permitted by right in the I through L districts. Under the executive order, conditional in all districts F through L, And then here's where we are now for micro standard, and that's a typo. That should say major data centers. So a much more tailored and careful approach. I'm sorry, here's another typo. This is all conditional, even in the latest draft. The next change here was a revision to the setback measurement method. So before, and I have a graphic here to describe this, all parcels that fell within these distances from zoning districts A through G, parcels with light rail stations or transit centers, and parcels with schools or parks. Any parcels that kind of hit those setbacks would have been excluded. That was criticized as a sort of arbitrary standard when really our intent is to establish a distance from the building or whatever other use of the property may emit noise or light or heat. And we thought that that was a fair observation. So this new language, as shown, buffers more directly from nuisance generating buildings or equipment rather than at the property line. So here's a graphic that compares the previous measurement method to what is now proposed. So previously, anything in these 600-foot radiuses from different types of sensitive properties would have been excluded. Now, it's just portions of those properties within these radiuses, and a building, so long as it falls outside of that setback on a parcel, could be located there. And we did some mapping to show kind of the new implications for how this plays out across the city for the micro location or the micro data center type. So here we had the 150-foot buffer, and here's a map of the implications of that, showing the relevant zoning districts and also the FEMA floodplains, really just for reference rather for their relation to the regulations directly. And zooming in here, you can see how some of this works. So it appears that some of these properties are eligible, but really you could not put a building there for this use that would be viable within these setbacks. A little bit different on some North Grand properties. And these are in large part occupied, but it could be reasonable to consider expanding that buffer for the micro data centers just to close up these gaps on commercial corridors. However, just reminding that there is still the conditional use process to evaluate specific proposals. Sorry, this is standard data centers shown here on the map, and then majors. And I apologize. We've done a lot of work and refinement the last few days, so seeing a lot of typos as we're moving through. I apologize. The fourth significant change here is refinement to the urban design standards. One piece of that is the language has been adjusted to require active use on 50% of the ground floor rather than prohibiting data center use in 50% of the ground floor. So that's more explicitly to get at the intent of an active ground floor in relevant districts. So this would apply only in the H and I districts and in the L district in the case of micro data centers. We also, in consultation with one of our commissioners who is an architect, moved in a direction to take a slightly less prescriptive approach with the landscaping requirements, just acknowledging that every site really is different. So having a quantitative standard may be just too blunt an approach. But we also added some basic parking placement regulations. The parking simply should be placed at the rear or side of a building and should not extend beyond the established building line, which is a standard type of parking location regulation in our zoning code. We also added a range of measures that are more not quite architectural, but just urban design standards with the intent of, especially in the case of new construction, avoiding the development of big windowless boxes, but also avoiding regrettable alterations to existing buildings. So things like allowing a basic percentage of fenestration on facades, that windows actually be kind of transparent, and so on. We tried to strengthen the air quality protections related to backup generators by further clarifying their exclusively backup role, that they not be used as a source for standard operations of a data center, or, for example, when electricity prices are too high or anything like that. Reinforcing other requirements, I believe backup generators, and it was Commissioner Williams who raised the NFPA standards. I believe all backup generators are held to those standards too, but just making sure that that is the clear expectation here. And then also, we did review the history of the AQI index in the St. Louis region, and that gives us the confidence that there are plenty of days below the 50 AQI for testing, sufficient enough that reporting requirements for the Clean Air Act could be met on those remaining air quality days. Renewable energy requirements, we made some refinements here, and maybe I'll let Director Alicia Russell speak to those.
Well, thank you. So on this section, we did a few things. So we made sure to include all the available pathways for renewable energy. So that included clean energy riders, meaning the developer could work with the utility to develop more renewable energy like solar. We also changed the maximum annual percentage of renewable energy from 100% to 95% to avoid preemption from the state that kind of seemed to cross into state regulations. So we changed that. And then we also more narrowly defined the eligible renewable energy credits and allowances. So really clarified that at no point, no more than 25% of the requirements could be met through local renewable energy credits, and then further define that a little bit between like the state versus the MISO region. And then last included a penalty to encourage compliance based off the market rate for local recs. Thank you.
We're almost through these major changes. As relates to the Public Impact Agreement, or PIA, we did flesh this out a bit to kind of elaborate on the criteria for how these should be reviewed and what could and could not be included. This was also important for kind of keeping it within the guardrails of what could be specifically required as part of a zoning ordinance. In the applicability section, there were concerns raised that the crossing of just by use or maximum power demand from one data center classification to another, there was a concern raised that that doesn't have a basis for removing legal non-conforming status. And kind of in further review of kind of relevant principles related to that, we did think an adjustment here was appropriate. And so we've moved in a direction in this latest recommendation that is as consistent as possible with how other existing non-conforming uses and their expansion are treated. And then finally here in the section that sets a self-imposed deadline for review, we've just simply flagged a couple of key issues that are certain to evolve and that we know will require review in this period of time. We were also asked by the Commission to research whether a public consent mechanism is possible through zoning. And here is the general finding that there are strict constitutional limits around when this type of requirement is upheld by courts, and it is also just very administratively complex. Even if the collection of signatures and the costs of that type of requirement are placed on the developer, it is still required for the city to verify those signatures, and that involves a process of calling everybody who signed. So we also have not identified any other city with a citizen consent mechanism in place for data center permit approval. But there are some state level ballot initiatives that would enact such a requirement, which I think might be a little bit of a different story if enacted by the state rather than a local government. And there are also some local initiatives to require them for data centers seeking tax incentives. So not land use approval, but tax incentives. And I think, number one, I'm very understanding of the public's desire for such a mechanism and such a requirement. But looking into this, I think we do generally advise that this type of thing would be subject to legal challenge and also just very difficult and time intensive for the city to administer. It might better be considered outside of the zoning regulations. We are also asked by a commissioner about the revenue implications beyond property tax, and a colleague at SLDC did provide us with additional analysis. So here, I'm just going to provide this real quickly. We can jump back to it during discussion, but here is sort of the high level picture comparing facilities of different sizes, and this is based on megawattage, an estimated total of capital investment, what the year one revenue would look like, the average annual revenue thereafter, and then how that adds up over a 10-year period. Here are some of the assumptions of applicable fees and taxes. So there's the building permit fee, which is a big part of what leads to such a high upfront revenue impact. And then there's the assumed real property versus personal property share. These facilities require really extensive equipment investment outside of the real estate investment. So that is why this personal property tax rate or share is so high. These are just the set commercial and personal property tax assessment ratios, the commercial property tax and personal property tax rates. This is the utility tax rate. So this is 10% of all utility gross tax receipts. This is a job estimate to kind of get to some implications about what the earnings tax revenue would be. And then the electricity consumption and electricity cost factor into then what the utility tax revenues would entail. We're also provided with this tax revenue per acre comparison of kind of other uses in the city. And I think this analysis really does suggest that the fiscal impact of data centers, because of some of their unique characteristics of utility use and also personal property tax investment, is high compared to some other uses. So it's just something to be aware of. We were also asked the question of whether it's possible to cap megawattage in addition to physical size of a data center. And I think the general finding is that this approach does risk going beyond the province of zoning, given that these types of things, electric utility services and rates, are regulated at the state level. But physical size remains an available mechanism to limit intensity of a development, and I think in our analysis, a more defensible one. I'll also note we cannot find an example of any other city capping megawattage of data centers, though others have also asked themselves the same question. Is it possible to think of it this way? I want to provide just a little bit of analysis of this kind of physical square footage cap question, because I think the physical size cap does represent sort of the best, most defensible option for capping intensity of the use. In the recommendations as presented, the regulation is that the building shall not exceed 500,000 square feet in total gross floor area. And the rationale for 500,000 square feet is that this is roughly the size of some existing data centers in the city downtown that are operating at somewhat, a max power demand of 20 megawatts, but not yet using up to that maximum power demand, operating in some cases closer to 13 megawatts. But it is true that with AI functions and different servers and chips drawing a much greater load, a 500,000 square foot facility could demand a much greater energy load. So the intent of 500,000 was to prohibit large data center campuses that just with the city's urban fabric, we are certain cannot effectively be integrated even into industrial areas in the city, but to allow for adaptive reuse projects that could reuse large vacant buildings downtown or in industrial districts. And the kind of scale of this type of facility, if it's adaptive reuse, great. But if new construction, that would be managed through additional urban design controls. And I'll note Kansas City has established a 500,000 square foot threshold at which many new requirements for large format uses start coming into play. So they don't have a cap, but that's the threshold at which they start regulating data centers and other uses more seriously. Kansas City has a very different physical layout than the city of St. Louis, much more outlying, suburban and kind of light industrial, large format area than the city of St. Louis. So not a direct comparison, but one that's available in the state. Louisville actually just published a draft set of regulations that also recommend capping at 500,000 square feet. I will note other uses don't have a physical size cap in our code that I can think of. Not to put you on the spot. Yeah, just maybe one. Well, the room probably picked that up. Thank you, Andy. But, just with the express interest in exploring other caps on intensity, we did look into this a little bit more, explore whether there are other ways to think about a square footage cap. So our approach to this analysis was to identify areas where standard and large load data centers would be conditionally allowed, identify where these most closely align with SLOOP designations, and then we analyze the distribution of existing buildings by square footage to get a sense of what is the range, especially if we're thinking about adaptive reuse or thinking about new buildings that would match, kind of cautiously match the physical fabric of these areas. So here were some of the areas we sampled. We did focus on industrial areas here. And again, we selected these as areas where there's close alignment with what the SLOOP would kind of think about from a land use perspective. And this was the distribution of existing buildings in those surveyed areas greater than 10,000 square feet. So this is a lot, really, are much smaller existing buildings. We also did and by we, I mean others on my team, did quite a bit of looking at parcel size, but that starts to get a little bit harder to translate into what a building might look like. We also looked at buildings that were over 125,000 square feet, so kind of honing in on larger industrial buildings in these areas. And here you can see the distribution there. So there is sort of a tail above 500,000 square feet, but most buildings are under 350,000. So, I think there are other appropriate ways to think about caps. I think this is information available for the commission to consider during discussion, and I know there's interest in an amendment. So just wanted to provide some information for this discussion. And finally here, I believe this is the close of my presentation, I wanted to bring to the public's attention, this is with the commissioners' input, that commissioners or Alderwomen Saunier and Schweitzer have put forward a number of amendments for the commission's consideration. And they're listed here on 3 slides. I'll just briefly describe basically their the topic that they address. So one is seeking or adding that information in the packet as part of the application submission be made publicly available. proposing a 250,000 square foot cap in total gross floor area, adding a reporting requirement of energy consumption. Asking as part of the application that there's a plan for meeting the renewable energy threshold. Seeking to prohibit major data centers in all zoning districts, establishing new renewable energy thresholds and kind of periods in time at which those would hit, requiring submission of relevant agreements made with Ameren, and also requiring the agreements that reflect ability to meet renewable energy thresholds. And then here are some more adjustments to those renewable energy targets. Adding that the public hearing and public comment must be accepted on the public impact agreement that would pertain to major data centers. Switching back to the system where crossing a megawattage threshold would trigger new compliance requirements, and having that lower AQI maximum for testing days apply to all types of data centers, not just standards and majors.
All right, thank you very much. As Miriam said previously, we did continue the public hearing so that we can go ahead and move straight into any final comments that are made. We have 15 minutes alternating between people in the room and people online. My question is, who do we have signed up in the room? Thank you.
There's nobody online.
Nobody online. Great. All right, super. We should be great for time. We only have 4 speakers. So let's start first with Lewis Hamilton. Please go ahead and introduce yourself in full.
Thank you and good evening. Excuse me. My name is Lewis Hamilton. I'm a resident of the 8th Ward of the City of St. Louis, and I'm representing the Downtown North Community Improvement District, otherwise known as the Wash Avenue Community Improvement District, and the existing data centers that have been operating there for some number of years lawfully. If I could, before you start the clock on my 2 minutes, I'd beg for leave for 30 seconds so I can say nice things about your planning staff and how good. No, really, it's, I've been doing liaison work with the city for a long time. And it's not always that you get a project like this that's complicated and you want to pull your hair out, where the staff that's working on it has been really terrific to work with. So, and we agree on most things, but so now you can start the clock if you want, but I wanted to say something nice because it's worth it. In any case, for the last, several months, I and my colleague Matt, who you'll hear from next, have been working with Miriam and her staff to really concentrate it not on the city's plan to regulate new data centers, but preserving the opportunity for the existing guys to continue operating lawfully and without problems like they have. So we've been back and forth on a number of things. We had some issues on the power issue, and I think the staff's latest update is much saner. I think we agree on the terms and conditions of the existing non-conforming use, which is, a doctrine that's, almost universal in the United States in terms of property rights. My concern is, and members of the commission should have an email that I sent to Miriam Monday. My concern is that while we agree on the intent and we agree on the application of this, the wording needs a little bit more specificity, because Mary Hart Burton's not going to be here in 5 years. She's already told me she's retiring. She'll train a new zoning administrator, but that person may not have the same read of the words that we would have. And I don't want to have the people that I work for have to check me out of the nursing home 5 years from now to come back and argue the case before the city. And we're just simply asking in section 2677060, we have, sections A, B, and C, we provided some draft wording to the city to clarify this. And we would ask that the commission take a look at this specifically, and we'd appreciate consideration.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.
All right. Next, we have Matt O'Leary, also from the Washington Avenue CID.
Good evening. Again, I'm Matt O'Leary with the Wash Up Sid. I'm the executive director. Also have great things to say about Miriam, Elysia, Mary, and their entire team. I won't say what Louis just said, but I just wanted to give you some examples of what we're trying to accomplish with the language that we've submitted. First and foremost, we think there's a bit of a hole in the existing language related to the policy intention of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is it's ambiguous as to whether an expansion of a new data center has to fully comply with the rules and regs in this ordinance. The language we propose would clear that up, which isn't in our interest, but I think it is to accomplish the intention of what's trying to happen here. The other language is trying to do two things. Number one, if an existing tenant in a data center building wants to expand, that's generally allowed under non-conforming use rules. We want to make sure that that's clear. And this has to do with the fact that there is no definition for facility. So it's not clear whether a facility is a building or a tenancy. And the definition for data center also doesn't distinguish between a building and a tenancy. And those are very important nuances to get right. The other piece of the puzzle is if a new data center tries to open up in an existing data center building, that ought to be allowed without full compliance with the ordinance. And so the language that we're proposing would just bring the language clearly and unambiguously into compliance with the agreement that we've reached with Miriam and Mary and their team. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, Joe Delia.
Good evening, Commissioner. My name's Joe Delia. My address 6600 Manchester Avenue. I run two businesses within the city, and I, like everyone in this room, want the city to succeed. With these data centers, there must be a balance because the demand's not going to go away. I think we all understand that. It's only going to increase with AI. The AI that's helping healthcare. Think of Barnes Jewish, Children's. The financial services industry. Think about Edward Jones or Stiefel. Education, think about WashU or SLU. Their use will increase exponentially over the next decade. Everyone in this room has a cell phone, has a computer. Storage for our phones and computers, not in an imaginary cloud. It's in a server in a warehouse somewhere, which is a data center. The staff has done an admirable job. I believe one point needs modification is a 600-foot buffer in District K alone, the industrial zone. And I'll give you an example of that. This ask is only for the industrial district. No one wants a data center in a neighborhood. The District K was intentionally created in the city's highest intensity industrial district, a place where infrastructure, manufacturing, and freight already occur. The city's industrial designated District K is where data centers belong. The problem is the current framework calls for 600-foot buffer, which does not meaningfully account for real-world conditions. For example, Highway 70. 6-lane road at Union Boulevard. One side sits a District K, the other side sits a neighborhood across the other side of the highway. Under the current rules, that 600-foot buffer renders some buildings in the industrial district unusable because they're on the other side of the highway, which makes no sense because this is a heavy industrial area and the current buffer restricts where data centers should be placed. Reading from their document, according to the National Association of Counties, typical building setback requirements for property lines range from 200 to 500 feet from residential property or zoning district. But the city's current buffer calls for 600 when the national standard is much lower. I would encourage the commission to consider a more calibrated 300-foot buffer in an industrial district, as previously in the earlier versions, it was 300. And which is more in line with the national standard of 200 to 500 foot. The current 600-foot buffer in District K will limit business expansion in the city of St. Louis. The city of St. Louis cannot afford to be left behind and miss out on these valuable opportunities because demand is not going to lessen and businesses will move elsewhere if you have these restrictions. It's an environment that's too restrictive and you're going to lose businesses. And I don't want to see that as a business owner in the city of St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And last but not least, Sean, is it Fans? Faust, sorry.
Yes, Sean Faust, Ward 1. I've been up here before, so I don't want to, I'll be brief. I am up here tonight on behalf of the Building and Construction Trades Unions. Obviously, we have an interest in seeing development occur, but we live in these communities also. So responsible data center development is what we're advocating for. We don't want anything too restrictive or prohibitive. So as you can see, I live in the city like you. There's a lot of revenue that could be generated from these developments. My kids go to public schools here in the city. When we're talking about closing schools, I think we can all understand how important revenue is. And I ask that anything passed tonight be considerate of the revenue and having guardrails, having regulations, but nothing that's prohibitive of development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, we have managed to get the comments done within the time period. We had a lot. Thank you so much for the final comments that were made. Thank you to the general public for the comments that have been made previously. Do I have a motion to close the public meeting?
So moved.
Second. All right, it was moved by Commissioner Fowler. Second by Commissioner Hubman. Call for vote.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderwoman Saunier. Commissioner Bradley.
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler.
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman. Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Vice Chair Banton.
Aye.
And Chair Boaz.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Right, excellent. Now the challenging part of moving to commission discussion. We have some very specific amendments that have been suggested. Do we want to start with before we dive into those, some other topics? And I'm going to start at one end of the table or the other. So I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Hubman. And I guess I want to say that when you bring up an issue, I'd like other commissioners to be able to comment on that issue, and then we'll move to the next commissioner.
Just pulling back a little bit. I know this is kind of putting this into the current zoning. Being updated as we speak. So I'm assuming also there's that 2-year review period to revise, okay, or at least assess. As we move through sort of these two overlapping interstitial periods of this whole approach, is there a mechanism you're putting in place to sort of track key issues and, points that come up that maybe aren't working the way you intend them to or whatnot, just to kind of codify that so that as you hit those thresholds of, you're already probably in the midst of that threshold in the zoning update itself. This is probably informing that quite a bit, but before it's finalized, you'll probably have a little bit of experience using this. But then also that 2-year. So I'm assuming there's a mechanism that staff is using to kind of track those particular issues, pinpoint them so that they can be investigated. And can you speak to that?
In all honesty, we haven't established one yet for
Mhm.
this topic.
Mhm.
Way of thinking about that for the zoning regulations in general has been to review the variance record of the past couple of decades.
Mhm.
What are the reasonable things here that we should make easier than our new regulations? And some other ways of thinking about it. I think that's something we could talk about is how do we flag or back things that are not working? I don't know.
Yeah.
You guys have anything to add, looking at that exception always.
It seems like it'd be a pretty straightforward thing to set up, but so that the multiple departments can all sort of contribute and pinpoint, so that it'll drive an efficient conversation when you get to that point.
Yeah, one of the things that's in here that it seems is the interdepartmental review
Mhm.
process. Maybe that's the thing with the next application, whenever that we bring to theirs. It's, as you review, let us know if there's anything that's not clear as you're reviewing, or I don't know, use that review process to get some participation there.
Right. And then my only other point would be,
just kind of remind us of what it would be to, you know, for a developer to come in and ask for a variance to the existing zone, you know, if there's a 600-foot buffer per se, and they're wanting to push it back to 450 or 500, there is a process they can go through and what that looks like to apply for something like that. It isn't absolutely dead on arrival, correct? Where it makes sense, they could make an argument and then it could be determined.
Sorry, I could barely hear you, but I think you were asking if there was a process if somebody wanted to do something and it
Just
fell in the
If you could
buffer.
remind us of what that is really
Yeah,
quickly.
so it would be like anyone else who can't meet a requirement of the zoning code. They'd
Mhm.
apply to appeal to the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah.
We'd set up a public hearing
Mhm.
and
Thank
it
you.
would be up to the Board of Adjustment.
Great. Thank you. I'll pass it on.
Okay.
Down
Any
the line.
follow-up questions about that particular topic?
I guess the question I have is if the Board of Adjustment says that they have a unique hardship allowing a variance, they would still need to meet all of the conditions set in the code. Would that trigger then them to be considered as a conditional use?
At the point it gets to the Board of Adjustment, the Board of Adjustment can amend the conditions.
Okay, I'm
It
just
wouldn't
thinking
be
of,
mandatory that,
I'm just thinking if
I don't
there's-
know that they would. I'm just saying there is a possibility they could.
Interesting, okay.
But it would be right that they would come with the question of, hey, we can't meet the setbacks or we can't meet that buffer. They would go for a variance or an adjustment to that one piece. And
Right.
right, so I think that's your question.
Yeah.
We're not going to nix everything else just because they're
Right.
saying like the
Right.
buffer is the problem.
Right.
Just clarify.
be specific to a specific,
And then they would be
Standard,
triggered
right,
through the
right.
regular process.
kick them into the denial. Everything else would apply, and the Board of Adjustment could add additional conditions,
And they could amend.
even standard conditions.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good question. Very much. All right, Commissioner Davis.
I don't have any comment at this time.
Commissioner Fowler?
I just have two things. I'm not going to touch the amendments, but there's two things that have came up over and over again. It's the buffers. And I just want to talk about that one. Well, I understand that some people might see them as being overreaching. I think that we also kind of want to make sure that when we're developing, we have a diverse area. So we don't want data centers on top of each other because you run into situations where economics change or what's the new thing changes, and then we have a hole. And if you have like, say we ended up with a situation where there's 5 data centers in this row along River to Pear. If that, type of development goes bust, then those buildings are now garbage. So just want to make that comment. I like the buffers. I like where they are. We've rehashed this a lot. The other thing is, there's comments about, kind of if there's a data center and that tenant leaves or that company moves and it was a data center and a new one comes in and wants to use it, I think that's a good chance for the planning commission and the public to weigh in on if they want that data center there or talk about whatever requirements they want and realign with the new rules. I don't think that just because it's non-conforming now and that tenant leaves or that person leaves, they should just say, oh, this is a data center before, we just want to reuse it. I think that's our opportunity to go back in and make sure they're complying with these new rules. Kind of blanket statements there, but if anyone wants to talk about those.
I do think we have, I've now read so much about this, but I thought there was a time period, like if the,
I think it's 1 year, it said. I believe.
like if it's not that use, then
Yeah.
poof, that,
I agree with that. I'm okay with that. I like that.
yeah, but it'd only be triggered if the data center left and then there was no data center in there
That's fine.
for a while, right? Isn't
That's
that-
correct. Yeah, if like current data center space became unoccupied by a specific tenant, that could be reoccupied. But if the use became dormant for over a year, then the new standards would apply.
Yeah.
I think to follow, I mean, what I'm afraid of is basically us creating like a medallion system for data centers because of the, for existing
taxing
data
them.
centers, And I'm a little concerned that, let's say a data center leaves and a new one comes in. Is it just blanket? It's because it's a data center, it's fine, or does the scale matter?
The way non-conforming uses are handled generally is if the use doesn't change, but there's a reoccupancy in that 1 year period, it doesn't trigger any additional review. But if they were to, whether occupied or not, if there's any structural enlargement or physical expansion, then the new review would apply. Does that
Well,
answer
I
your?
guess for data centers, technologically, they can fit more in less, or in the same amount of space. So
Yeah.
data center number 1 might be 5 megawatts. And data center number 2 that follows in 5 years later could be 10. So, but in the same space.
Yeah, and this relates to, unless I'm overlooking something else about how review would work, this relates to that well, actually, say a data center closes, and then 6 months later, there's a new applicant to occupy that data center, but they're making a lot of changes to the building. And they may need to increase the loads that a floor could handle, because higher power servers are much, much heavier
No.
and require a lot more equipment now. Yeah. I mean, I'll say this is why we wanted to, and I mean, as staff, even though, I think we were persuaded by the arguments legally, it would still be my preference that crossing that megawattage threshold, just me personally, having researched this, that crossing that megawattage threshold would mean new requirements apply. It was just our analysis, and anybody, and including any, city councilor's office welcome to chime in, was that we didn't have a strong defense to that approach given the sort of case law out there. We were sort of a little bit out on a limb, and we didn't have a way to validate or support that approach.
If I could jump in,
Please do.
I think it's hard to speculate, I think, because there's maybe a scenario too where the next data center comes in is using much more efficient chips that are putting out more power or more product per se with actual less electricity. We don't know. I like this 2-year review period built into this thing to kind of begin to adapt and understand what's going on with the sector, the technology, the impacts, developing further understanding. Yeah, I think you're right. There are a ton of questions on this. I don't know how we button them all up in one in one document.
Okay. Other comments?
Well,
Can
what-
I? Oh, go ahead.
One comment on that. I mean, there are different alteration levels in the building code right now, on certain things that have to be hit for that kicks you into like a new code, for example, or having to update your life safety, blah, 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 for a specific building. And so I'm curious, that's a little bit different. That's more building division versus zoning section, but is that something that could be looked at as a mechanism of like, hey, you're altering 50% of your square floor area, that could potentially trigger a new set of rules, for example? Or is that a separate thing?
Oh, could you come up to the mic?
And I'll just note, because I'm not sure you can see that Commissioner Miller does have his hand raised. It might be on.
Oh,
this
thank
topic.
you.
Sorry, but go ahead, man.
Yeah, so to answer Jake's question, in the current zoning code, that would be only like structural changes, like things that are physically supporting the floor, the walls. I believe there have been things discussed for the zoning code revision that have talked about You know, if you change a certain percentage of the building in the way you described, then that would trigger an alteration. I don't know, they're not finalized, obviously, so I don't know exactly where we stand on that with the zoning upgrade. But currently, that would be only structural changes as they relate to the building and the floors and things like that.
Yeah. Which on one hand makes sense because you're altering the exterior, expanding or doing something that could trigger a revision to the urban form as opposed to just an interior renovation. But I think the concern is from some commissioners is packing in a whole bunch more equipment into an existing space. So I don't know how I feel, land on that, but
Thank you. In reading the proposed regulations, this is for existing non-conforming uses. How would it work? So if there's a data center that is conditionally approved at a standard level, if they make a change, they would have to come back. Like if they were trying to go from standard to major or micro to standard, because is that correct? Because we have sort of the legal non-conforming uses. Well, if these regulations pass, we have legal non-conforming uses, data centers that already exist in the city of St. Louis. And if they're trying to go from their 5 or less than 5 to 10, they're moving from micro to standard. We're saying unless they have to do a structural change and a major alteration and get a permit, they don't have to come back and go back to our regulations. My concern is that is a concern. That's a concern, but I think another concern I have is someone getting a permit, a conditional permit as a micro stand or a standard, either one, and jumping to major.
Yeah.
And right now it just, I think it just says legal non-conforming uses wouldn't have to report, but if it's a conforming use that makes a change and their conditional use is that, please answer the question. Yeah.
Yeah, so in this applicability section, there are 3 scenarios that are described how regulations would apply. I think you're speaking to the second. So expansions, full compliance would be required for, again, this is any enlargements or structural alterations to an existing facility. So whether existing at the time of adopting the regulations or after adoption of the regulations. And this relates to, this is the same principle that constrains us on non-conforming uses.
I mean, that's a pretty big deal that I think we should be very concerned about when considering this use and the possibility, if we're never asking them to come back, if they don't have to show a new, service agreement, if they don't have to show anything has changed, I think it would be, if I'm looking at this, I see that as a big loophole.
I agree. I mean, I think I was disappointed on where we landed, but also want to land in a place we feel there's strong basis for. I'll mention, and this would be a major thing that we probably can't flesh out all tonight, but the one city, we searched and searched, or have other cities figured out how to handle this. Most cities are not using these megawattage thresholds at all to establish different classifications. So they're also missing this intensity expansion tied to power use challenge. But we found one small municipality outside of Boston that had a whole renewal process required. So a conditional use permit would have to be renewed on some period of time. Now, this is like a completely new, unprecedented concept in our local context, but that was the only example we could find of a city that found a way to manage that.
Do you feel like that's true of cities, but states are looking at megawattage thresholds? Or do you feel like states seem to be looking at megawattage thresholds, but you're saying cities don't?
there are a handful of cities that use megawattage thresholds to establish different types of data centers and requirements. Most are just using square footage, but we haven't found any cities that have dealt with this expansion of power use, but not area or like structural change in expansions issue, which I think we're speaking to. I'm not saying we should be concerned about our megawattage classification. It's just this expansion of megawattage.
Right.
That is where we're coming up against a wall.
Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty big differences and expectations between those categories. Obviously, you know, in my opinion, different land uses. You know, if you think about a use that is a micro use of energy versus the major, I mean, that is world of difference in terms of what you're doing on that property and how it's affecting the people who live around you, work around you. The number of generators that you might need to use, for example, is one specific thing on that site. So
I think, you know, one thing we discussed and still didn't feel like legally great about in terms of like precedent or case law, but one thing we discussed was whether the addition of additional external generators could trigger, because those would be required to support more backup power. So that's something I think I suppose just in terms of the city's interests, I would want council to weigh in before I fully recommend that approach, but that is a way to think about it that we have discussed, but then again, didn't feel like there's much precedent for, but also this is all unprecedented. So
What's the approach that could be recommended? Can you say?
if
further?
expansion also included, so the language would read something like this. Full compliance is required for any enlargements, structural alterations to an existing facility, or the addition of external backup generators.
Yep.
Commissioner Miller, did you have sorry.
Yeah.
Sterling, sounds like
Yeah, that's what my question was. And I agree with Miriam's thought on that. That's what I was trying to get to, that since the legal team said we can regulate heat and noise, you know, and safety, if they increase the intensity of use, most likely you're going to be generating more heat. And backup generation also may be expanded. So to me, where we are right now, I mean, for instance, in some of these buildings, they're occupying 3 or 4 floors, and now they want to go to 4 or 5 floors or 7 or 8. Well, if they have more efficient equipment and they can generate the power and stay and not, I think we ought to have heat loads and backup generation if they don't change that, because that could have a significant impact on neighbors in the downtown area. And most of them, you know, are saying they want to stay where they are and continue to operate. And I think that's fine. And I don't even know if we can regulate if they use 5 floors versus 4 floors, but we ought to be able to regulate heat and noise and, you know, loading areas and things of that nature. And staying away from structural, because that's even, while it's clear in the review process, it could be murky in application because what's structural, but heat and noise. The other thing I just wanted to say, I like the 600-foot cap. I think we're fine there, and if there's exceptions, we can make exceptions if they have a good case. But as a general rule, I think we're on solid ground there. But that part bothered me.
Before we move on to the buffer areas, anything else on non-conforming uses, conditional uses?
I have a question, kind of getting back to Alderman Schweitzer's comment. If it's a new use, is there a way in this where a scenario, a developer could come in and apply for a medium-sized, build a bigger box with extra generators, and then day 2, ramp the thing up in order to avoid a public impact agreement having to go through that? Is that scenario possible in this?
It's possible. My understanding is it would be unlikely, because electric service agreements and interconnection study agreements are not renegotiated for those micro adjustments. with Ameren. The tendency, based on our understanding, would be to negotiate an agreement up front that maximizes the load that could be delivered to a site and plan all of the infrastructure upgrades that would be required for that.
Okay.
And typically what we've seen is people reach a higher agreement with Ameren and then they don't utilize all of it.
Okay.
They like lease up to that maximum and slowly get to that point.
So they're not self-reporting their megawatt levels. That's an agreement with the utility provider. Then that becomes the basis for how this is used.
Correct. And
Okay.
we could, as is suggested, require ongoing reporting of actual energy consumption and the zoning regulations, and there's consideration of doing that in parallel to the zoning regulations. But yeah, we would expect validation and consistency with whatever their agreement is with the utility.
Well, to that point though, so one of the things from Ameren's recommendations was in lieu of disclosing expected megawatt usage, doing their contract capacity. And so could theoretically, if typically they do submit for higher than they're probably planning on using, you could submit for a 50 megawatt contract capacity while saying to the city, oh, I'm only going to plan to use 25 to get under the major data center use, and then ramp up, and suddenly we're in now major data center use.
Those are different terminologies. We were trying to get at that exact concept though. Like whatever you've agreed to with the utility provider is what we would consider a maximum power demand. However, I think, there's a suggestion of requiring that agreement be submitted to the city. It's possible the applicant would claim that's proprietary information and wouldn't submit it. But in our minds, and maybe there's some tweaking to the language to clarify the intent, that's an equivalent concept as what we were trying to achieve. Like your agreement with the utility is your maximum power demand.
So that language is in the regulation.
We could tweak it, I think, to better reflect some of what Ameren suggested.
Okay.
So there's more clarity.
It's in there, but not using the word contract capacity.
Yes.
Okay. There's a lot of lingo.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on the subject of conditional uses? How about, go ahead.
Well, just one more. So in terms of the language changes that's being suggested here, is there issues that staff has with some of the suggested language for tweaking?
Are we changing topics?
That we were talking about?
Okay.
Or non-conforming uses?
Okay, cool.
That's, yeah.
That was a broader question.
No. I mean, in terms just of the non-conforming uses and revised language that's been proposed and submitted in testimony to the commission, is there specific exceptions to some of that language from staff?
Can you tell me what you're looking at?
The document provided from email
thank
from
you so
Lewis
much.
Hamilton.
Thank you.
I'll say that unless there is a different approach the commission wants to consider.
I got one. Thank you.
As relates to existing non-conforming uses, there's no concern. I think staff thought it was clear as is, but if there's intent to make it more clear, it doesn't change the meaning of the regulation.
Can I make a comment to that?
Please. Go ahead.
So doing this for a few days, I've run across many situations in my career where language appears on the inside to be very clear. And then time goes by and people read interpretations of that language as it benefits them. I have seen this over and over and over. And although I'm sure it is very clear to all of us sitting here, I would highly recommend, if you don't have any exceptions to this language, it doesn't hurt to make it specific so that someone a long time from now does not have their own interpretation of it.
All right. Have we exhausted that topic for now? Commissioner Miller, do you have any other questions on that? And we'll move on to buffers next.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, great. Any additional comments on the issue of buffers or questions? No. All right, let's move on to Commissioner Garmendia then.
Oh, my turn. No, I don't have anything. In addition to the amendments brought forth by my colleagues, the one that I find that I think will take the most time to discuss is the renewable threshold. But the rest of them made sense to me. And also the concept of creating a app, because major data center is 30 megawatts and up. And like just looking at Ameren's, what Ameren sent over, they are plans for 50 megawatts, 75 megawatts, and they have different, those trigger different things for them. And I feel like we should also have trigger points at 50 and 75, or, you know, it shouldn't just be 30 and up. It's kind of a infinite scale. So I feel like we need to put an upper cap on there. And that would, I think, help with the amendment that is hoping to prohibit data centers over a certain size as well.
So would you like to dive into the subject of renewable energy requirements? Shall we take that as our next topic?
No. I don't know.
Well, can we talk about just caps, overall large cap
All right.
size?
All right, let's do caps
At the
first.
moment. So my understanding from what we've been told so far is that it's not advisable by council to cap it at a certain megawattage, but we can consider capping it by square footage. Is that sort of a good summary of what I'm hearing so far, or no?
I think that's one interpretation. The state preemption seems to hinge on the utility connection. And is that not correct?
I think it's.
Right. So the city cannot prohibit, the city is preempted from prohibiting someone from connecting to specific types of utilities. And the reason that it exists in the state as it does is when there was interest in banning new construction from having gas. So moving natural gas out of new construction, just for same. So the people that are, wanting to see new construction include gas connections, put it into the, did their lobbying to get it into state law that we cannot say that you cannot have gas connections. So there's nothing that we're doing here today that prohibits a data center from attaching themselves to electric, to gas, to diesel, to a line straight to the sun, if they could figure it out. So in my mind, I do not think a megawattage cap has anything to do with their ability to connect as a utility. And that is what the opinion that we received from Renew Missouri and from the Missouri Coalition for the Environment agree with. So I think it's just a utility connection is what's regulated by the state, is my understanding. And we're not regulating the utility connection. I anticipate that if they have renewables, they will be through electricity and the electric in the grid, or they may produce on site and have what is considered a behind the meter installation or something that they're creating. If as long as it fits in the, what is considered the service territory by Ameren. But again, we're not the Public Service Commission. We don't regulate that. We're not trying to regulate that, but we are, in my mind, thinking about the land use of how much megawattage can be used, but not how that megawattage is achieved and by which utility connection.
Yeah, so if I were to offer,
I just want to quickly clarify that specific access to different types of utility issue that you're speaking to. That was the concern raised by 100% renewable, not necessarily the megawatt cap.
What was the difference between those things in their mind for?
The concern about the megawatt cap is that state statute expressly allows large load customers. And so, and local law, not like with something expressly authorized by state law.
we're allowed to be more restrictive.
Yeah.
And I would argue this would be us being more restrictive.
Principles shared. I don't know, Nick or others want to weigh in?
Yeah, I can jump in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's correct that land use restrictions can be more restrictive than state law. We cannot prohibit what state law permits. So we couldn't prohibit large load customers entirely, including data centers, but we could layer additional land use restrictions on top of them. So the classic example of this is like if the Public Service Commission regulates renewable energy panels, then a city could come in and regulate the reflective material that shines into residences' windows.
Nick, this is the first time you've spoken today. Would you just introduce yourself to the commission?
Yeah, my name is Nick Morrow. I'm an attorney with the City Councilor's office.
I mean, they regulate data centers to say that they have to, that large load tariffs are triggered at a certain amount. But what the city would be considering doing is not getting to that amount where they're triggered. So I feel like we're kind of boxing ourselves into something that I just disagree with as what we need to do. I mean, if other cities in the state can say that data centers aren't allowable use in any zoning district, certainly we can have the type of data center that is allowed in certain zoning districts. And then why wouldn't that be true, I guess, if they're prohibited anywhere? Which doesn't quite logically follow for me.
Well, I think in that case, they're saying that it's the type of land use that they don't like in their particular community, whereas we're theoretically saying, well, some of that, the land use is okay, but as soon as you cross a certain intensity level, it becomes problematic, which I guess is the legally problematic part of it. I don't know.
We do that all the time. We think about, how many, in our conditional uses, how many cars a parcel might be able to have if it's a used car shop. I have one in my ward that can have up to 3 cars on the lot. We're not saying that they can have 100, I think that if, one of the amendments that Alderman Sanya and I have been talking about is removing major data centers as a permitted land use in any of the zoning districts. So it doesn't specifically go with the megawattage cap, but more of the usage, which is the major data center, which we've defined. So that's why it's written that way instead of a megawattage cap in the amendment that I have, which I do think goes to the land use specifically, which we have denoted the differences between the land use of a micro, standard, and major data center.
Yeah, I would just add in that I've seen several times where as a part of conditional use processes, you consider the volume and you consider that impact on the neighborhood, whether it's auto dealerships or other things. I mean, I think even the process with like liquor licenses and whether you need a temporary permit or not, like there are many things in place in our codes or in our conditional use processes or other things where the severity in what you're able to kind of get permitted before are very much related to the volume, because the volume is seen as basically how you may possibly impact that community.
Are we talking about the amendments now?
I know, I'm trying to figure out if we've,
I think it relates, this topic relates to several of the proposed amendments.
shall we just,
Do you want to just talk about the?
yeah,
amendments?
let's do that. Let's
I'm
move.
sorry not to cut off anybody else that had questions. It seems like we're dipping into just going one by one on the amendments. and talk
Yeah.
about them.
Did you have could you pull that up for us? Thank you. Oh, can you zoom in?
Hopefully anyone watching at home can see it pretty well.
All right.
I guess there's two ways to talk about the cap, because there's two amendments related to that, which is.
Yeah, amendment
2
number
and
5.
For 5, okay.
And
Yeah,
2, I
Next
think,
page.
I think
Two.
amendment
Start with
2 makes sense to start with, because it's creating, that's defining the major data center, right? 250,000.
Subsection 21. So that's capping the size at 250,000 square footage,
Right now, that cap applies to any type.
any type.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that I think this is important is when you think about the concerns we've just brought up with the ability to move between,
Micro, major.
right. That this is, and to the research done by staff, it is a reasonable sized building to find within the districts that these might be conditionally allowed.
Yeah, I think I saw the difference in the number of buildings for major, or this number of buildings available between 250,000 square feet and 500,000 square feet, which is what's in there now. Yes. Was like less than it's like 5, 4. No, wait. Yeah, it's like 4 buildings. So I think this is a fine, it doesn't have much impact.
Well, what's,
So it could apply to new construction?
Yeah. Doesn't have too much impact on the existing buildings, but.
what was the, do we know offhand the max sizes of some of the existing data centers in the city? And for example, what the proposed Armory data center was, square footage proposed for that? Does anyone remember that number?
125,000 if I remember.
521?
525 and some of this.
525.
I believe neutrality is about 500,000. I think tier point,
Neutrality about 500,000, I think tier point 350. Oh man, don't quote me on it. I'm sure about neutrality though.
Yeah, I don't know. The 250 to me, I know we're trying to limit, and really it's trying to limit the intensity of use, but I would hesitate to limit ourselves from prohibiting larger data centers in the areas we do want them. 500,000 seems appropriate to me based on existing uses that are already in the city.
I'll note in this analysis, we sampled primarily from industrial areas because that is where our mind was going toward sort of capping the intensity of uses where the largest type of data center would be even conditionally permitted, because downtown they'd be limited to 30 as recommended.
I know the thing that I may be potentially more swayed by is I'm still very concerned about this upscaling of a lower class to a higher class. Like, could we put in a threshold for the standard data center, which currently we're saying is between 10 and 500,000 as it currently is? I guess there is no, it just goes from micro is less than 10,000 and max major is 500. So could we have a middle threshold of standard in between that? That would then kick in regulations as well, either for an expansion or for a new data center.
So a square footage number at that standard to major threshold as well. Yeah, that's an option. I know this doesn't solve or answer the question of these upfront regulations, but Nick did note that it's also an option to place a condition on maximum power demand in the process of approving a conditional use. So that could also be available as a way to manage this whole expansion question. That would have to be, considered on a project by project basis, but that would mean that if someone wanted to exceed that cap, they would have to come and update their conditions.
But not something we could put, not something that would be put in this, or would it just be listed as a separate condition? Because I would want to have that directed, not, to Rich's point, 5 years from now, or Commissioner Bradley's point, 5 years from now, they forget that we're supposed to ask that in the conditional use hearing.
Could it maybe be specifically noted in the regulations that BPS shall place a condition on the intensity of the use, such as megawattage? I'm not.
We're kind of straying from amendment here, which,
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I'm trying to.
It all.
There's a lot here. Sorry.
It's all connected.
Vote on your existing one, and then if it fails, then brainstorm other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so amendment that we're talking about is capping the size to 250,000 square feet from 500,000 square feet. One of the things we talked about in previous meetings is this being one of the best ways for us to understand some of the intensity of what's going on in the site. So that is why it is here. I know we talk about existing data centers in our city. I would, caution us against that. We have a completely unregulated industry currently. They're operating as warehouses. We had no regulations over what they're doing. So any comparison is not helpful, I think, in this, because we're talking about an unregulated industry that has grown in a way that I don't think we would have wanted it to, based on the intensity of use and the drain on our resources, and putting in place now going forward thoughtful regulations. So that is why the 250,000 square foot cap is what I'm suggesting in this amendment number 2.
All right. Other questions on or comments on amendment number 2 in particular?
Call for a vote. You want to ask for?
I move to adopt amendment number 2 to these regulations.
Second.
Alderman Saunier, call for vote?
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
No.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
No.
Commissioner Davis,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
No.
Commissioner Williams,
No.
Vice Chair Benton,
No.
and Chair Boaz.
No. No.
And the motion does not pass.
Okay.
Be opening to revising that amendment to adding in a 250 square foot threshold for standard data centers and keeping 500,000 for major data centers.
Yes. So amending the amendment or having a new amendment so that the standard size is capped at 250,000 and major is 250, over 250,000,
Capped at
500.
capped at 500,000. Yes, thank you.
Could this be incorporated into the definitions, maybe, and we
Mhm.
strike the 500,000 in the areas?
Yes.
Right.
Do you want me to write it out or you have it? It's pretty simple. Okay, so I move to amend these data center regulations to set 250,000 square feet as the cap for a standard data center with 250,000, over 250,000 to 500,000 as the cap for a major data center.
Second.
All right, we motion a second, call for vote.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
No.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Vanton,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz.
Aye.
And the motion passes 1, 2, 3,
9, 2,
5, 6. Yeah, motion passes with
9.
8 voting aye. 9 voting.
Yes.
Shall we just move through?
Sure.
Continue through that. All
That
right,
works
let's
for
do it.
me. So another amendment on here, I know we wanted to talk about the, some of the caps. Amendment that's listed as amendment number 5 is to change the use table, to make major data centers non-applicable in every zoning district. The reason for that, in my mind, is we do not currently as a city have enforcement over some of the smallest things that go on. This is a huge use, a huge amount of energy, a land use that has potential to do a great amount of harm to the people of St. Louis, to our environment. And the city, while working on enforcement mechanisms, does not yet even have monitoring mechanisms for all of these things. So I am very concerned about opening the door to a use that will absorb that much energy and be such a detriment in many ways. While I understand the tax benefits, that is not primarily what concerns me right now for this land use, which I think we're talking about land use, not the tax benefit. That the land use could be harmful for the people I represent in the city of St. Louis, especially at this point in time when the city of St. Louis does not have monitoring regulations in place. And I was told by the mayor's office last week that even the draft bill that we have is not ready to move forward. So no even hope for probably a while in having good monitoring of these conditions. And that our regulation of this needs more time to be put in place. So I am very hesitant to see us conditionally allow that use in the city of St. Louis in any zoning district at this time, based on what I believe the city can handle. And I think if members of the commission were kind of thinking about their own experiences with enforcement of laws, and even members of the public, it is just so key to have enforcement ready, monitoring ready, in order to have anything that we put on paper mean something. So with that, I would move to amend the planning commission recommendations to change the use table in section 26.77.030, changing major data center to non-applicable in every zoning district.
Second.
Wait a minute. I just.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah, discuss.
Would it be possible, since the large data centers would require a public impact agreement, to include in that public impact agreement that the developer, owner, leasee, whoever, not the city, pay for a third-party monitoring of the various, impacts of that facility as defined?
So that was one of the, I've been working with the many staff members here and members of staff in the various departments in the mayor's office on and on a monitoring piece of legislation. And it was brought up to me on Friday that they're not sure which department would do that. But yes, it would be something that I would imagine would come into the building energy performance standards. I would imagine that they would have, in that draft, it does envision reporting and monitoring by third parties in a more aggressive schedule than is currently done with the current buildings that are monitored by the building energy performance standards. But like I said, I mean, the monitoring's not in place now for any of this. And two, there is not a consensus of where that monitoring should happen. And then without both of those things, there is no enforcement. And I think we need to be responsible and move this. I think we all want to move the needle, but it's moving the needle to a point that the city can handle. And I don't think the city can handle what it's promising in the major data center category.
Just to clarify, we're not able to monitor, and we're also not able to monitor third-party monitoring.
Right. I don't believe, yeah.
Yeah, I was getting confused
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be something submitted to the city. And I think one of the things that, data centers developers have brought up in previous hearings is who are they reporting to? They have a bunch of different things outlined in this regulation about different places where they're sending information, but there's not a one-stop shop for this, which is something that I think is important. If you're a business and they want to turn in their very lengthy adherence to the regulations, that they would have one place to go, and it would be a report generated in an annual basis that would be reviewed for compliance to the regulations that are set. But there isn't, in my understanding, well, one, we don't have that enforcement set for data centers right now. They currently don't report at all at the building energy performance standards because they've been qualified as warehouses and communication networks, so they hadn't had to report at all. So we have no information.
Aren't large buildings currently required to report energy usage to the city of St. Louis?
Not data centers.
Data centers are considered telecommunications infrastructure, so they're currently exempt from that.
But this would require them to. And there's infrastructure for large users to report energy usage to the city already. So I'm a little confused on where the idea that the city doesn't have the infrastructure to do that is coming.
Well, that's not coming from, yeah.
Yeah, I think too, reporting and enforcement are two different things. The purpose of reporting is that you have to have enforcement. And I would echo Alderwoman Schweitzer's comments that in my conversations with the mayor's office, I think they're very diligently working to figure out who should do what, whether it should be the health department or whether it should be the building division. But obviously, when it comes to enforcement, we don't look at how many building inspectors we have. We just had the budget session, and I actually had to advocate for us to have an environmental health officer because that position has been stripped out of the city's budget for the past 2 years. And that would probably be the position that would be, and it's probably because these duties are not defined, that would probably be the position who would be enforcing the noise ordinance or certain other things. So I think reporting is one thing. And I think specifically speaking as an alder, we put plenty of reporting requirements and plenty of pieces of legislation that there's no follow-up because the departmental capacity is not there.
So I guess my understanding is that the public impact agreement, the fees or whatever that the concessions would have to be from the development have to be tied and proportional to the impact they would have on the public and the community. So why couldn't the monitoring and then paying for the city's enforcement for that be part of that impact agreement?
I would say we regularly receive criticism for contracted work.
Yeah, okay.
And I would say, I don't know that that's not possible. But what I'm saying is today we're voting on regulations. And there's a lot in what you just said that's all defined and a lot of what ifs. But what is approved is an actual data center. And we're going to be talking about these things that are very tangible. And so the projects are tangible. But I think some of the things we're discussing, I really can't say. I believe the mayor's office is trying to work to figure out how these things will work. But they're just not there. They're nowhere near there. So I think like what you're proposing might actually be a solid solution. Perhaps it is possible to have some kind of relationship where the proposer and ultimately the person that's approved for the project helps the city financially accommodate a position. Now, would you need a further position about, well, can the city, is that, do you change the pay rate? Because maybe the city's pay rates are not as competitive to attract people to the position. Are you able to change the pay scale? How do you get third-party money into the city's budget? Like those are all logistics that don't currently exist and that are very undefined because this is just such a different type of use and project. And you're dealing with departments that are already struggling with what is assigned to them and the duties that they have now. And now we have this large thing coming. Again, I don't necessarily think it is even on a developer that would be in bad might. It is just a reality of departmental capacity and processes and infrastructure from a city perspective for these projects that has simply not been developed and that is largely still undefined.
What would be the time, like, so my thing is we make these rules now, we come back in 2 years or whatever, and we, like, what's the time, like, we don't know the timeline that anybody would be able to monitor anything. So we just kick this can down the road, I guess.
No, but I wouldn't say that. I would say that we're making a huge stride forward with a lot of what is in here, with a lot of very thoughtful regulations. But I don't think we're ready for that major data center size jump. And to be able to enforce that. I have concerns about standard. I guess the one exception I would say to we don't have data centers that report is that until 2025, there was one data center in the city of St. Louis voluntarily reporting. That would be considered like a standard data center. And they were paying, $1 million in energy costs yearly. This is a standard data center. It's a huge user, humongous, but it's standard. So a major is just, I think, needs more time. We're not banning things. We're not having a, moratorium forever. There's a door open, a crack open. I'd say a large crack open for regulations here with what we're doing. But I do not believe the city is ready to regulate a major data center with all of these regulations that are on it today.
And I would just say too that I think that the fact that there's one approved, I think that will give us some time in real time to maybe figure out how some of these things work and how they go. Without necessarily considering other ones. I think in terms of kicking the can down the road, I think in some cases, if you put the can in place and the can explodes and you haven't put in the proper infrastructure in place, that explosion can have real impacts on residents. And so, again, I would say for this, my concern is putting too many things in place at once that you've not, the infrastructure is undeveloped, you don't have the proper processes. We're not clear on what department would do what staff member would do what, but you're doing it. And it's well, we have to do this at some point, but you have to do it responsibly and you have to do it forward thinking and really thinking of the impacts. And I'm really not, it is not specific to data centers. There are several things that we could talk about in the city of St. Louis that just don't happen because the capacity from a staffing perspective is not there for things as simple as mold, for things as simple as temperature enforcement. You don't even have to get into the nuance of a data center. There are so many things on a much simpler level that just simply don't happen. Or if they happen, you have to actually have the individual alder to be the one to follow up with the department to make it happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have just a quick question, I think, for staff would be if the major data centers are basically non-applicable, is there a ripple effect to the document that you then have to kind of go back just in order to remove confusion? Okay.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Yes, but I wouldn't suggest that should constrain
Okay.
the commission. Those would be easy edits to make.
Yeah.
It seems like a cynical approach to me personally to go through all this effort of writing regulations for major data centers just to say then that we have no method of enforcing them, so we're not doing it.
I don't think it's cynical. I think we should write the regulations and then it's the carrot. But I feel like the legislative branch does have a unique insight into capacity because we're told no all the time. We cannot do that. We do not have the capacity to do that. And in this case, you have Alder's being told, we're not ready to do that. And yet we're gonna, so I want to say it's not, it's trying to be realistic and responsive and to provide the, like, if we approve all the rest of this, then we've essentially created an incentive for us to properly staff our enforcement capacity. Because then we'll get access to this new, very profitable use in the city. So.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I had a question about like, so if this is not applicable or prohibited, is there a route for a variance or going to BOA?
Yeah, I think to the points earlier made, there is a,
And then we wouldn't have anything in place to hold them to? Or what happens then?
A variance for.
they have a variance for the type of, I guess to the point of if there's a variance for the type of use, a specific hardship that they'd have to prove. I mean, variances should be very seldomly done and they should have to prove, a specific hardship. In this case, it's your specific hardship is you don't want to follow the megawattage cap, which I don't really feel like it's specific. I don't think that would, to me, that's not a case for a variance. You're trying to do something that's.
Or some tips into the next category beside chance.
So
I would say that the concept, the criticism that it is cynical. I would say that I am pretty cynical. Having been on the board of aldermen now for 5 years, which isn't a very long time, I have become very cynical about a lot of things. And I hope that has made me more realistic about what I think the city can and cannot enforce. And this is something that the people who I represent, by and large, would prefer we don't allow at all. At all. By and large. And I think that is shown over and over again by the vast amount of testimony we receive, the just overall sentiment by the public, again, the people that I represent, that we represent, that I think we as commissioners represent sitting on this board, on this commission. So to me, that's who I represent. And I'm trying to get realistically closer to what I think the people I represent want to see happen.
Miriam, remind me, did we have a map that showed the major data centers on? Yep. Thank you.
We have to have it separately pulled up in case we want to zoom in for some reason, but there it is.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what did. It's major.
And did we have a close-up example?
Close-up example of a specific location.
Yeah, of a random location. Trying to figure how this plays out.
Location. This is the Mark Twain I-70 area.
Make it
And just a reminder that the commission has the option to move to enter into closed session at any time, should anybody want.
Thanks for that reminder. We want counsel?
And I would say one thing about erasing any of the parts of any when I look at what St. Charles City did, they defined data centers and then made them not applicable in any zoning district. So I do think it's important for the city to define major zoning district, regardless of whether it is listed as non-applicable or applicable, because then the work and the input and the place that we've gotten to so far remains. And if there is a change in the future date, we start from there, not from zero, which is why I would not recommend removing anything about major data centers in the definitions, the public impact agreement, all of the incredible work that's been done. I would just recommend, and my amendment is to just change the use table.
All right, I don't have a sense for consensus. Is there more discussion or should we do a test vote?
At the risk of beating a dead horse, I have one more question on this. So
This is tough. This is a lot.
yeah, so large data centers don't happen overnight. And it sounds like the city is already interested in trying to figure out how to solve that particular issue of monitoring and, enforcement. Is it not practical to think that if a proposal came across that couldn't be resolved in the time period it takes to?
I think we should take that gamble with the standard size data center and not with a major one. Because most of these requirements are also laid out for the standard, and it would give a sense of whether or not the city has the ability to enforce these things before we take a gamble with such a large use that will so potentially negatively impact the people of this region.
Yeah, and we passed legislation in 2023 that's still not been implemented.
Mhm. Probably without a funding mechanism, though.
Where's it
Yeah.
funded?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Oof.
Yeah, I would also say, the people that I represent do not like that approach. I think they're already very leery of I mean, honestly, just leery in general, but then definitely the idea of well, kind of eggs before they hatch. I think that it is a lot easier to kind of get the public on board with give us some time to kind of scale up these things and see how they work. I think that just lands a lot better than opposed to open up the door to the highest capacity or highest usage available, knowing that you don't have things in place. It's a lot easier for me to talk to residents and say, I know this process may not be going the way you want. I know you be unhappy and you prefer, you want the regulation of, hey, my residents want us to be able to put this on a ballot. I know you're not going to get that, but I hope that you can see that we're at least earnestly as a city trying to take our time up. And I think it's very normal to scale up industries over time in terms of how you phase them in. And I think that usually helps all parties to be a little bit more comfortable and work out some of the kinks without the highest level of gamble happening.
As Miriam showed this map, I asked her, as we look at it, we're talking about the whole city and the 62 square miles of land that we have in the city, and the mixture of uses. On this map, Miriam, does this show the only areas that would be eligible for large data centers? Major.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just based on our understanding program, it's worth it. They would be most likely to want to locate close to existing high capacity substations, of which there are only a handful in the city. Doesn't mean somebody couldn't go to the expense of building a substation. That would be at the developer's expense, but.
Where are those substations?
There is one here. There's one.
Oops, sorry, I'm not
here.
seeing, oh, we're not seeing a cursor.
Okay, there's other way. For commissioners in the room. There's one here. There's one here. There's one here. Okay. Are there any on the south?
Okay. All right, any other discussion on this or are we ready for a vote?
I just would say thank you to everybody for hearing it out, and I appreciate any consideration for this. So.
I would just say maybe if it gets voted down, maybe commissioners could think about a time period that they might be comfortable with. That's my final comment.
So I move to adopt amendment number 5 to the regulations for data centers, which would amend the use table in section 26.77.030 by changing major data center to non-applicable in every zoning district.
Second.
right, call for vote.
All right, Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
No.
Commissioner Fowler,
No.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
No.
Commissioner Davis,
No.
Commissioner Miller,
No.
Commissioner Williams,
No.
Vice Chair Benton,
Nay.
and Chair Boaz.
No.
And the motion does not pass.
I'll say I am very sympathetic to the arguments that I heard from our policymakers, and I would say that, you know, I would totally understand if a change was made at the Board of Aldermen regarding the use table based on the political realities of the city. And if that were the case, then that's the case. But as a planning, body here, I think a lot of good work in terms of the regulations of major data centers is appropriate and on sound planning principles. And I don't necessarily see a reason for us to block it at this body. While there may be an opportunity to block it at the Board of Aldermen, that might be the more appropriate route for whatever policy reason. It's my perspective anyway.
Well said. Well said. Shall we move on through the other amendments, just starting with the first?
Sure. So Amendment 1 is adding a section to the application so that there is additional documentation provided, that what is provided at a public meeting is provided to the Board of Public Service for consideration as well. Not just that they have a meeting, but the actual documentation and what's presented is provided as well.
Sorry, which one are we on?
Amendment number 1.
Oh, going back to
All right. Any discussion?
Can I move to make that amendment?
Second.
All right, yeah, oh, please, motion on the table.
And motion and second.
All right, sorry. Second from Hubman, thank you. All right,
It's been moved by Fowler, seconded by Hubman.
all right, any discussion? Commissioner Miller, any questions or comments?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, all right, call for vote.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Benton,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, next move to amendment number 3.
Thank you. So amendment number 3 includes the reporting of energy. So annually that the data center for standard and major data centers would have to report the total energy consumption to the facility, to the Office of Building Performance. Right now, there is a report requirement for renewable energy use, but not for overall energy use. So this just makes that specific requirement for reporting in what is currently in the zoning recommendation. If you look at just above where it goes over all of the different places that reporting needs to take place, it does indicate that, there may be likely another ordinance that goes into the enforcement of this, but this piece seems to be necessary for that interim time period.
Thank you. Should we have a motion on the table?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry. The
Previous
motion
roll.
Hubman?
Fowler.
Fowler?
Very far away.
There was a call for previous row.
Oh, yeah, any discussion? No, all right, any objection to previous roll? Hearing no objections, motion passes.
David,
Sorry,
So sorry, Sharon.
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Thank you. So amendment number 4, first of all, thank you for that vote. Amendment number 4, one of the things that the city is not asking for in these regulations is the plan for how the data center applicant will meet the renewable energy thresholds. I think that's a big concern, again, with allowing the use to happen with some sort of, kind of knowledge of what the 5-year, 10-year goal thresholds, not even goals, thresholds are, but no understanding by the city whether or not they'll actually meet it. So this is adding a plan for the implementation of the renewable energy thresholds to the requirements for the application.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
Should we define plan a little better?
I
Maybe
would, I am,
investment in infrastructure.
yeah.
Something like that.
I think that would be a great addition.
What did you recommend, Commissioner?
Investment and infrastructure
Plan.
plan.
Okay. Furnish an investment and infrastructure plan.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, when thinking about this one, I was thinking about, the data center applicant is being, they're being asked whether or not they have there's a lot of different words, interconnection, study agreement, construction agreement, and or electric service agreement with the utility provider. I would imagine in order to know that they could meet these thresholds, they would have to have some sort of similar agreement from the utility provider. But that I wasn't sure about if that should be spelled out.
Yeah. If there's a better way to, I was just wondering if some baseline of what a plan is would be a good thing
Like a
to
capital
require.
plan?
Sure. I'm,
Yeah. I mean, one of the good things about the conditional use process is they provide a one pager that says, we will get this done. And that's it. That could be looked at as you really have not met the application requirements. We're not granting it based on this. That's something that I could see happening if people thought it wasn't a good plan. Yeah, the goal here is to get to that point. So I'm open to any language that you think strengthens to Commissioner Bradley's point, the ability for the next set of eyes and ears or whatever to be able to read this and understand what it says.
yeah, I want it to be more than a commitment, something that could have a sniff test to pass at the regulatory level. Is this realistic?
Yeah, and I wonder if we would get into the that they would say, oh, that's proprietary.
Well, okay, then maybe they approach you with what that transition plan would be in their own language, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there's got to be something that has some rigor behind it or some practicality behind it.
We were discussing the program, what this language.
Wouldn't have to be.
They'll have to have had some communication with the utility to understand why and the pathways they would be choosing with the utility before knowing if that they could meet these. Could be.
What is what path are you taking to meet these requirements at certain points? So first, what renewable energy will be readily available to you? And then what programs or access that you'll be taking advantage of?
I definitely am all for staff input on exactly how to ask this question.
Timeline, I think, is a key word.
And yeah, scope, schedule, budget.
Scope, schedule, budget.
What words would you like to insert? We've just thrown a bunch of words out there.
We did.
All words that we appreciate and think are good, but
About scope, schedule, budget for your transition.
Okay,
To
so
meet this.
instead of sorry.
So it's just plan?
the facility shall furnish a scope, schedule, and budget for implementation of the renewable energy threshold.
Schedule, budget.
Okay,
Sounds good.
all right.
Okay.
Okay, any more discussion on that? Got it written down. I'll take a motion.
I move that we adopt Amendment 4 as revised, that the facility shall provide a scope, schedule, and budget for implementation of the renewable energy threshold to section 26.77.040 subsection 1.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Garment.
I got
Oh,
it
I think we had
first.
Commissioner Garment.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, okay.
She was a second.
Yeah, I didn't know, I keep talking.
Okay.
Previous roll.
Any objection to previous roll? Motion passes. All right. Moving on. Amendment number 5.
did that one.
Oh, we did 5, sorry. Amendment number 6.
Amendment 5. You can do Amendment 5 again if anyone had changed of heart. I think, yeah, anytime you all want to go back to Amendment number 5, I am here until the bitter end. Okay. It's important to get us laughing. Okay, Amendment number 6 is about having a renewable energy threshold upon the receipt of an occupancy permit. The reason I think this is important is because I guess I would liken it to eating a hamburger every single day, every single meal, and then being told in 5 years, you're going to have to cut that in half. And, you know, that's not what you're doing anymore. And now you've got things in place, but you haven't actually shown a commitment to doing anything differently before that. So in my mind, the renewable threshold, there should be some sort of renewable threshold when they are entering, when they are getting an occupancy permit, as opposed to just setting it in 5 and 10 year increments. So that, yeah, one, I think this will make the public a lot more comfortable that there is a pathway to the 5 and 10 year requirements being met. And two, I think it would just be a better land use when we're looking at something that's energy intensive. So
How feasible is this to be day one, 50%? I mean, I'm asking like,
yeah,
is
so
it actually possible?
yeah, I mean, I think when we have, I'm gonna be cynical again. I'm excited for you guys to hear it.
I get like pushing the limit, and, like asking for like the moon. But I'm just trying to figure out like, have we seen that before? Or is there a track record of anything happening like that? I don't know. I don't deal with
Data
energy.
centers are a brand new world.
I'm just asking like.
Yeah, it's a brand new world. I think everyone in the entire world, entire country is trying to figure out how to balance being open to a use that is potentially transformative and has so many benefits in some ways, and then also the kind of stated understanding of the climate emergency that we're in and needing to take bold action at local, state, federal levels to prevent that from happening and further degrading our world. So in my mind, and being, again, I was going to be cynical again, the money behind these endeavors is astronomical. If they are not the ones responsible for adhering to guidelines like this and putting this forward, it will never happen. And these are the moments, these are the decisions that we make in our roles here at the Planning Commission that might help set a trajectory that I think is better than what we have. So that is why it is in there. Again, if they can't figure this out, I don't know if anyone can. And then we might as well just light our sustainability plan on fire because we're not going to enforce a single piece of it.
Would we open it like smaller steps? I'm just asking, like, would.
Do you have any in mind?
Huh?
Do you have any in mind? Is there anything else you'd like to see here? Yeah, I mean, the 25, so there's the first piece is 50% renewable before the occupancy permit is issued. Half of that being either on-site, so that's electric that is plugging into, or, you know, some sort of solar, something that's plugging into the grid that is behind the meter, something that they privately own and operate and use to power themselves, or directly connected to the local grid. That is a commitment that they have with the utility provider to provide a certain amount of new renewables that are servicing this customer. And then half is done through the energy credits, which is definitely feasible. Those exist. And I think is and then this is flags further that it's the regional RECs from anywhere in the MISO grid. So I think this is.
Can I ask to be reminded what the MISO grid is?
So,
yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Transmission territory goes from like a little bit in Canada all the way down through Missouri to like the eastern portion of the state and then down through Illinois down to Louisiana. So that's where like all of the utilities that cover that territory share their energy. on
So in
table.
other words, Alderwoman, it's a way of saying, if our local utility in Missouri wasn't able to have a robust amount of available renewable energy, it could come from that exterior.
So trying to make it more plausible and, you know, I neglected to say earlier a little bit more with timeline. Utility scale solar developments take an average of 18 months to go online. So these large projects will likely take longer than that as well. There's a lot here to consider and get together. So
Yeah, I like the idea of having some level right off the bat. I would throw out maybe 25% instead of 50 and 50 at 5 years and then the 95 at 10. But to your point of, you know, this is large corporations and huge sums of money doing this. You know, for example, the recent huge data center announced by Google in mid-Missouri, you know, they're committing to 500 megawatts of additional, building out 500 megawatts of additional capacity for, you know, Ameren and establishing a 20 million energy impact fund. So like they have money to implement these things.
yeah, I think we're thinking a little smaller than we need to. And I think that is what has prevented governments from properly enforcing and regulating industries that are damaging our environment for decades. And unless we start changing how we regulate things, we will not see any change in the outcomes.
I'm wondering, like, I don't know enough to know if this can start day one, simply because, okay, say a 5 megawatt data center, you would need 1.25 megawatts on site. How big is a 1.25 megawatt solar array? Does it even fit?
It does not need to be on site.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
That's okay. But that's a very good question. Very good. I mean, it's important to clarify those things. And in thinking about that, I tried to think about those exact cases.
Staff, do you have any insights on this that you could provide in terms of?
5 to 10 acres per megawatt.
I'm sorry, I'm more meaning relative to what are other communities doing?
Oh.
Yeah, I would say it probably really depends on the availability of renewable energy in our territory. So like we have like an investor-owned utility, so we're required to go through Ameren for electrical power. And then there is more, renewable energy on MISO's grid, but purchasing RECs outside of Ameren means they could be unbundled RECs, so they're not tied to actual renewable energy generation, so they're not retired. So I think, if we were gonna seek RECs, which I think are important to meeting renewable energy credentials currently, they would probably be best if they were bundled and retired, which would also go through Ameren's territory, just so we have that tie to the actual energy generation. And here it's also important that, it's we prioritize the state first and then MISO.
I think that's a very strong change to this.
It generally does. Like, I don't really know, like right now the mix is about 12% renewable energy, but I don't know what excess capacity there is. There is more coming online. It does get deployed pretty quickly as well. There are a number of programs that Ameren has for like their business customers as well as large load customers. So I think,
12% is the MISO capacity.
that's Ameren's. And that could be a mix of what they're generating or even importing through the grid, through the territory.
But what you're envisioning is something like what?
Nothing.
Something like the Google facility where they're committing to provide that.
Yeah, I mean, it breaks it down so that there would have to be actual renewable energy in their facility or being used to power their facility. And the ability to have, so if it's 50% renewable upon occupancy permit, then before they're able to start working, before they're able to start doing their data centering, if you will, that it would be 50% renewable threshold is met before occupancy permit is issued. Half of that 50%, so 25% of their energy would be new renewable energy generation, either on site, behind the meter, which means they build it and have it for themselves. I don't know if we can do an Ameren's territory, or directly connected to the local grid prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit.
Then there's also the use of like clean energy riders where that developer would support building new solar or whatever. And like our renewable energy definition is very explicit to what we mean.
And I think if a household, like an individual household can buy and install solar, data center developer or company that it should have the resources to build.
Oh, I mean, financially, I was just thinking geometrically.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, so
how
yeah, I
does
think
this-
the main thing
how
is
does
it
this
doesn't have to be
work?
on site. It can be
Right.
elsewhere.
Okay. I'm not familiar with the term behind the meter that if it's not on, okay. All right.
From a drafting perspective, I might suggest that any like additional renewable threshold set references like the full array of compliance pathways or others that, you know, mention clean energy riders, virtual power plants, all these things which kind of incorporate the potential for behind the meter purchase through Ameren.
And I appreciate that recommendation. I think the spirit and goal of this amendment is that having that threshold at entry, and half of that threshold of 50% being, you know, actual new renewables used to power the site, and then 50% being the mix that we've discussed. If anyone can do it, the billionaires can.
I believe in them.
I believe in them.
All right. Any other discussion?
So for, just to clarify, so you mentioned the regional recs in here. Did you have a thought on any limitations on local recs?
Yeah, I think that some of the comments made by staff were good about keeping it consistent with other language throughout the bill. So I would just might have them read what they would suggest for that second 25%, so that we can be consistent if we choose to adopt this amendment.
Yeah, because I was also looking at what was in the updated regulations that planning staff provided, and I did find that there's like two sentences in here that are confusing to me. Up to 25% requirements may be fulfilled through local recs. No more than 25% of recs can be used at any point to meet the requirement. So it's a little confusing for me, because then it would be the recs have to be local.
Right, and well, the way we defined it, means if it's the state, if it's the state, they're gonna be bundled, they're gonna be credits, and if they're through the territory, they're gonna be a requirement that they would be bundled, they would go to Ameren to get access to those.
So how they're written now, no regional.
It's included.
It's part of, okay. It's not split up.
It's in the definition.
So would you recommend changing both of these bullet points? In terms of, is there anything wrong with the at least 25% new renewable energy, either on site, behind the meter, or directly connected to the local grid prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit? Anything you'd see needing to change there?
I mean, I would say we'd probably want to keep it consistent with the language in the draft. So that includes, you know, behind the meter, but make sure that we have like clean energy rider, PSC approved programs.
Okay. Yeah, I would defer to you on being able to capture the language with the spirit of what we're getting at here.
Okay.
So she shouldn't change it where she's saying that's the plaintiff's or.
But I do want to make sure, I guess the point that I'm making here is that I do, and maybe this is amendments that need to be considered throughout the regulations, but I don't want to limit or remove a requirement for like real production of renewable energy serving the facility. And I think that if you're does your suggestion, do you think does that do that?
Yeah, I think so. And bundling, especially needing Rex as a last resort, makes it tied to that energy generation.
But would it, I don't know if I understand. So part of this is having half of this 50% produced for this facility, and is not, I'm trying to make sure that I'm not like accidentally getting rid of the production that needs to happen, that I believe needs to happen for the facility.
I think you are correct. If I'm following this right, that sounds right. Because you're basically saying like, this is how much you need upfront, and half of that has to be produced
for you.
And the other half can be that last resort of Rex.
Right.
Could we come back? Could we come back to this one? What I'd like to have you do is type up what we've just discussed so we can actually vote on the actual language.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I think it's good to know what we're talking about. And I would add too, is if we do decide to have the actual production of renewable energy that is tied to a facility, that we standardize that throughout the regulations too. Does that make sense?
So we're
I don't want to accidentally, I want to make sure that if for this threshold that there's renewable energy produced for this, this specific data center, that is true at every threshold at 5 years, at 10 years.
Okay. All right, we'll come
Thank you.
back to that one. For right now, we'll just move on.
I'm gonna put a question mark by it.
Yes,
Okay.
go put a question mark.
Thank
We'll
you.
revisit that one shortly.
Okay,
Sorry.
amendment number 7 is basically right now, in the conditional use application, the applicant has to say whether the applicant has executed an interconnection study agreement, construction agreement, and or electric service agreement with an electric service provider. So to me, that's a yes, no question, whether you have or have not. I would like them to provide it to the city. So that is, if so, applicant shall provide a copy in their application. That is a substantive change there, but that also, number 8, makes it so that both micro and standard and major, or sorry, that same section. I want all the different, I'm trying to basically get to, yeah. So that number 8 is that same point is, around renewable energy. So that whether they have agreement of some sort with the service provider, and how they will meet the renewable energy provider thresholds, and if they do, that the applicant would provide a copy in their application.
All right, any discussion of, let's do discussion first. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Miller? No? All right.
I would move to adopt amendment number 7 to the data center regulations.
Second.
Previous roll?
Any objections to previous roll?
I just want to vote on this one.
Or you want to?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, let's vote. Okay.
Objection.
Call for vote.
Okay, yeah, so Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Saunier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Bannon,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay. Moving on.
Thank you very much. Amendment number 8 is something that will probably also need some further input by staff and drafting by staff. But the goal of this is having the 5-year 100% renewable energy threshold, and then it goes over specifics about where that generation can come from, and gives a little bit more weight to the local recs as opposed to the regional recs. So that is something that, when we talk about land use and the effects on the people of the city of St. Louis, energy that is produced, if we are only, if the city, if the region is only building natural gas or other emitting plants, we will suffer the asthma rates here in the city of St. Louis, the closer they are to us. So I would like to make sure that as much as possible, the cleaner energy creation is happening as close as possible to my 7-month-old child, as opposed to the dirtiest possible energy creation and then it being paid for by recs in other states that have better renewable infrastructure. So that just adds a little bit more weight to that local creation of recs and also the 5-year timeline for renewable energy. And I do understand if that's one that maybe needs a little bit more time for a staff-specific recommendation.
Questions, comments?
But this also changed, so I think right now we say 95% renewable.
And this comes back to that question about the utility connection. I do not believe that we are not affecting anything to do with the utility connection here because I'm assuming that they're going to be using renewable electricity, but I could be wrong. There may be some new secret third option that we don't even know about. So we are not trying to do anything about who they connect to at all. It is simply about renewable versus non-renewable. That does not have anything to do with the utility connection.
What's the difference with the staff recommendation versus this?
Recommendation is a longer ramp-up period for achieving renewable energy requirements. This one includes like that, before your occupancy permit part, and then at 5 years, you're at half. Half your energy load should be coming from renewables through either RECs or like the initial pathways, and then initially at occupancy, and then at 5 years, this is asking for a 40%, and then the rest would be made up of local RECs, and then a small portion RECs through the region.
So with the research that you've done, is this reasonable to achieve these goals?
I would say that looking at amendment number 8, this type of pathway leads to like more renewable energy quicker, but maybe not exactly like renewable energy generated in Ameren's territory. But so it's just changing like the ramp up pathway, and I haven't explored this pathway.
Chairman, if I could ask staff for clarification. When you mentioned stuff related to amendment number 8 and in Miriam's your presentation, you just outlined what it said. Was that part of your presentation in earlier today?
No.
All right. So that's number one. We had thought about it someplace where I'm hearing that there's a request for new staff work that might be done, needed to be done regarding this amendment number 8. Versus what we have. What's the period of time that we need to expect that staff work to be done?
I think we would have to talk with Ameren a little bit more. We have reached out to them for comments a few months ago. I got some feedback just the other day. So maybe I would say we probably want to, I would say probably at least like a day or two. Yeah.
And how does that reflect and work into the calendar for moving this along?
Yeah, I think that to pass regulations before the summer recess, this needs to get introduced. Probably, ideally, it would be introduced from the floor on Friday, which would allow a hearing next week in time for at least 2 hearings. But if it were introduced next week, I think there would only be time for 1 hearing, and it might need to jump ahead on this. think there'd be time for one hearing next week, potentially two, if there's, I mean,
And it has to come back before the planning commission because
but that doesn't matter if it passes at the Board of Aldermen without any changes.
yeah, without any changes, if there's a change at the Board of Aldermen, and then it has to come back before planning commission.
And then back to the Board of Aldermen or no changes?
Before the third final vote, because if planning commission says, no, we still really want our way, then we have to, the bar for votes at the full board is higher. So it'd be 10 votes instead of 8 if we have a change from what.
Thank you for doing all this research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing I'm a little confused on still is, so your amendment proposes raising the local from 25% to 40%.
Yes.
So we're trying to incentivize, the goal is to incentivize the local renewable creation, but also
decrease the amount of time to get to 100% as well, from, because you're starting at 50% upon entry as opposed to achieving 50% in 5 years. And then it's 100% in 5 years because you're starting with 50%. Ideally, if both amendments pass. I mean, again, to me, it's hard for me to believe they're going to get to 100% if they start with nothing when they enter the market. I don't know what, and I think, I think we're all worried about these potential bubbles, 5 years of the emissions that these data centers will be producing, both here locally with generators and in our region and beyond with the energy use that they will take, is not something that we will recover from in 5 or 10 years. So
what was the purpose of capping it at 25% initially?
I think it was just to allow for more wiggle room and leaving the recs like open to anywhere in the region, but then that way it's still pushing for energy generation here in Ameren's territory, Ameren, Missouri.
The lower amount or the higher? You're talking about moving it to a higher amount, a higher percentage.
What? I'm so sorry, I can't hear the question.
For like it was a lower amount to make sure that more production was tied to the facility, but that lower amount had more flexibility on being provided anywhere in the MISO region, but tied directly to energy production in MISO territory.
I would be interested in a table where we want to incentivize local generation, renewable generation. But I can also see the argument that it would take longer to have local renewable generation. So I'm wondering whether you get 10 years if you're 100% local and you get 5 years if you do more regional. So you get that choice of, hey, you get less time if you're going to go the market route, and you get more time if you are actually investing in our renewable production.
Yeah, I like that.
interesting.
Okay, how do we take this to a motion?
Yeah, it's interesting. A good question, Chairwoman. I've lost thread a little bit. Yeah.
Commissioner Miller also.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Miller. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings about that last comment. These RECs markets are dynamic. And I've been in the energy efficiency business for 25 years. And the more restrictive you get on where they can get the RECs, the slower the process can be. Demanding them all up front could impact the project. So I thought the staff had the right balance in the initial draft of trying to require them. But I'm not opposed to that last comment of I think Commissioner Gramendia made, that we could add that to the mix. But I just think this might just be a little bit more restrictive than we need to be. These markets do change, and local markets depends on what Missouri does. And are we trying to drive the state of Missouri? Well, good luck with that. So, okay.
No, just projects that happen in the city of St. Louis. Yeah, I mean, I know we're talking about amendment number 8, but I think that's why amendment number 5 sorry, I'm still trying to get you guys to go back to amendment number 5. Why amendment number 6 is important to have that, renewables upon entry. That is why that the recs are more broad, to Commissioner Miller's point.
I can't hear you.
Is that what you're trying to do?
Are they in the same section?
We can't hear you down here. I'm sorry.
They're debating combining the two and making a table.
Oh, a table's fun.
No, I'm just wondering if these two amendments, 8 and 6, are in the same section.
Subsection J. Yep. Yeah, they're the same section. Yeah, they're separated just because I figured they were two kind of different amendments for consideration. But yes, they are very much connected.
Yeah, maybe we could vote on them separately and then instruct staff to make it a combined table. No?
Yeah, I know that we were concerned about having the language in front of us
think
to
the
vote
table
on.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chairwoman, you're the chairwoman.
Oh, my feel is I need a table to make a decision.
Right.
I need, I feel the need to vote on something that I can fully understand. If we're all inclined to do so, which is the test we haven't taken yet.
I just want to ask for some clarification too. A lot of this depends on Ameren's capacity to bring renewable energy online. Yeah. It's not just the user or the developer, it's Ameren.
Well, data center developers can bring on their own renewable.
Right.
If they have the space to do it.
If they have, or they buy a property elsewhere.
To feed Ameren. Period.
That's what the behind the meter means, is that they would have
Meters.
that. Yeah. So these are all very, very good questions. Behind the meter means that, they could produce their own renewable energy and connect to it. So.
Yeah. I
That
guess
seems like
it's a good-
on site or proximate
maybe
to site.
proximate, yeah.
In the Google project, they're working with them.
I mean, we're not directing Ameren to do anything. We are looking at the use of land within the city by a business or, a user that wants to do a project, and considering that what they're trying to do and the energy needs, the regulation is on them and how they provide what they need to do the business they're trying to do on the piece of land in the city of St. Louis. So that is why it explicitly says that it's up to the data center to provide.
So quick question on timeline. It sounds like there may be some interesting pathways forward on this, but we're running up against the clock here. Theoretically, with the adoption of the new zoning code, does that provide another opportunity to make tweaks to this? So if that,
idea.
that gives staff a little bit more time to research some of this, and 6 months from now, I forget what the timeline is for the new zoning code. I hope I didn't just freak people out, but
We'll have a complete draft by late fall, but enactment won't occur until into 2027. So we're gonna have into next year a lot more review, refinement. So just for the commission's.
So is it possible to kind of instruct staff to work through and better understand because I don't know enough to really be able to approve this right now. It seems like there's too much in the wind. And then come back for an amendment at first convenience, when you feel like you've got a responsible, well thought approach to this that everybody can kind of get behind, then approach us with an amendment.
I'm comfortable waiting on 8, but not on 6. So I want us to vote on 6 today.
Yeah, I think that to answer both of those points, yeah, amendment could be prepared for the Board of Aldermen as part of the process and then come back here. That shortens the timeline pretty significantly than waiting for the ZOOP to be in place. I also agree with Commissioner Garmendia that the need to have a threshold upon the issuance of the occupancy permit to me is a crucial missing piece of these regulations. Which separates Amendment 6 and 8.
Good job.
Yeah. Thank you.
So would you, I guess, for number 8, would you just like to table that for now, or would you like to?
Yeah, I think
actually
we can
vote?
work, I'm fine working with staff to talk about the, a 5-10 year. Looking at that changing 5 and 10 years, and to Commissioner Garmendia's point of different timelines for different energy uses, I think that's really interesting as well.
We understand if we're tabling it and then doing some work from that period is tabled, it needs to come back to be untabled.
But not the whole document, right?
Yeah, there would be like an amendment.
When do you
Let's pass
expect that?
this and then.
Yeah, the amendment hasn't been there's been no motion on the table for amendment number 8, so it doesn't really exist at this moment, except in our conversation. But I think it could be something where in the verbal description of how the planning commission reached different amendments and different recommendations that are made to the Board of Aldermen, that this was one that we had asked for more time on and is something that is presented to the Board of Aldermen as an amendment, and then it would come back before us. If the Board of Aldermen passes the regulations, it would come back before the planning commission to pass. Is that correct, Commissioner Garmendia?
Yes.
You've got the time, you've got the process memorized.
But what you're saying is we would approve the current language now.
Yeah.
Right, except I would hope with amendment number 6, to the staff's, writing of it, for the threshold upon market entry.
And we're waiting for some language before we're ready to make a decision on that.
Yeah, those are all the amendments for me.
All right.
Waiting for
Is that all?
Do 9 through.
Alderman Sanye is taking amendment 9
all right.
through 11.
Please take the stage. Tell me if I'm wrong. Isn't 6 the one that we said we would come back to after you put together some language that you could put on the screen so we could then agree tonight on how to move forward on that one?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thanks very much. All right. Sonia, please.
Okay. Amendment number 9 is basically just it's proposing that there be public comment that is accepted as a part of the public impact agreement during the conditional use process before it is approved by the Board of Public Service and the Board of by the Board of Aldermen. I think this is really important to get an idea of what the community and members of the public think about these things as the process goes. And I also think that, from previous processes, there seems to be a point of contention when folks in the public feel like they don't get an opportunity to weigh in. And so to make sure that at every stage of important discussion, we are also able to get public input and to make sure that there's open dialogue for residents to be able to voice their thoughts.
I had a question, actually about this one. Is it because, so the public impact agreement is going to be a resolution that goes before the Board of Aldermen? And I'm trying to, for every board bill, we have to already have a public hearing. And I'm just trying to remember, we don't have that similar requirement for resolutions, right?
And resolutions don't even have to go to committee.
Yeah, resolutions, because you can be on the floor and you can just pass a resolution right there. On a Friday, you could technically suspend the rules to introduce a resolution and then vote it through right there. And then if the Board of Aldermen, unless we send it to committee, that is the place where residents would be able to do. So this is to make sure that we would not be able to do a resolution on the spot, on the floor, just only have a conversation amongst ourselves. And really the flag that I would have is like, because we have that option of being able to suspend the rules to introduce, it's possible then that there was actually no public notice, that there was nothing on the agenda, that there was no communication with the public at all, that this was coming up, and someone would just suspend the rules to put it on the floor. And of course, as alders, we get the opportunity to dialogue. But then even at that point, I might not have had a chance to hear from residents or people who I'm supposed to be voting on their behalf, but yet we're expected to take this vote.
Okay. Yeah, so I think there's a real need. It kind of covers up a loophole that just the resolution process at the Board of Aldermen.
All right, any discussion on that one? No? Right. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, call for vote.
Hubman Fowler.
Oh, sorry, Hubman Fowler.
Fowler, Hubman.
Oh, Fowler, Hubman,
Hubman Fowler.
Hubman Fowler. Okay.
Previous role.
Hubman Fowler.
Any objections to previous role? No. Motion passes. All right.
So this is back to me. Unfortunately, I had it ordered. This is back to the megawattage information. So if a facility changes their megawattage throughout their occupancy permit, that they would not be able to continue using that occupancy permit. So I know we've gone back and forth on this a bunch, but this is an actual amendment that we would not have that as part of the regulations.
So this goes back to what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Where the concern is that you could have an existing user add a whole bunch of capacity within the square footage of space and it drastically increase, intensity of use. But not necessarily trigger a step up into the regulations. So I am concerned about that. But it sounds like there's issues with using megawattage to do that. So I don't know how to get around that.
I mean, I would say that megawattage is the standard way of looking at how big a data center is. Every state that's looking at this, every city that's looking at this, they're thinking about megawattage and the size of a data center. So to me, I just don't buy it that we can't regulate on that.
Yeah, and I would just add too that I think there is absolutely a relationship between space and megawattage usage, but I think to assume that relationship is directly correlational is not necessarily true. And I also think when people are looking for information, I think people understand megawatt to be, a specific form, currency, metric unit of measurement in a way that doesn't directly translate to square footage or other uses as clearly.
Is there any other use in that we regulate that regulates intensity of use in any way at all? Other than
everything, yeah.
But I'm trying to find an avenue here, for example, of an accepted practice that we might be able to.
Proxy housing units is proxy for intensity. Floors is a proxy for intensity.
Yeah, but that
liquor
sort of has, well, I guess units, but the floors and stuff is all sort of, I'm trying to find something that's not like square footage
Well,
based.
liquor.
Well.
That's funny, Kristen.
Going back to what you said though earlier, Jake, it's, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Like, if I'm trying to think of put my head in like the situation where this happens, the biggest one we're worried about is like somebody going from like a micro to a major or standard to a major. When that happens, I'm trying to think in the world of development, like when that happens, you're pulling permits to make changes, right?
Maybe.
So is that,
I don't have any experience regulating this industry, so.
I don't think it's a maybe though, like you're making major changes.
Are you?
Based on today's technology.
Or you're not, but
You're
I
not,
mean,
maybe.
you're making changes. And when you first initially set out for that building, you have a performer, you have an idea for that building. You've talked to electric, you've set everything in motion and you have a game plan for that building. Yeah, I mean, 10, 20 years, maybe something changes. I don't know, but that's a big maybe.
It is a big maybe.
I
We
am,
also have 2 years now to see how this goes and we can make changes.
so listen here now, if we have enlargements or structural alterations, compliance is required. Yeah. The other pathway, if we don't fiddle with this, is let's say the noise level suddenly changes. Then it's a nuisance property, right?
Right.
If we can enforce it,
Yeah.
which is one of our biggest issues with nuisance properties. Ask, yeah, I mean, ask those who enforce nuisance properties how often properties get shut down. And maybe we can come back to amendment number 5.
It's still a nuisance whether you enforce it or not.
Well, it doesn't matter if it's not being enforced because then the people that I represent will suffer.
Yeah. Second.
Well, this goes back to what we had talked about before. When we have
I can report it as a nuisance.
the energy use, we're going to get energy reports on a regular basis. We approve that. So if the energy use goes outside the framework, we can go in and look at noise and heat. Those are things that are clearly within our purview to regulate if they're changing and not no longer meeting the standards. If we want to change based on the megawatt to a higher standard, I think that's worth looking at. I do. I mean, I think if you said one thing and you're doing something different, you need to follow the rules. And if we get the
Thank you, I agree.
reports, we have that ability. But sound and noise, if the thing gets hotter, there's more heat to dissipate and there's no more noise. I mean, we're on pretty firm footing.
They got to ramp their systems over there.
I wanted to answer Commissioner Banton's question on if zoning regulates the intensity of uses other than square footage. For residential uses, if someone increases the number of units in their residential building, then that would trigger a parking requirement increase if they don't already accommodate it. And then like restaurants, if they increase their seating, it doesn't even have to be a change in square footage. Or no, it does have to be a change in square footage. Yeah. But if say they rearrange the interior, move the counter or something, that would be an increase in capacity and potentially that could influence parking requirements.
Without necessarily triggering a permit. If they move a counter, they may have just moved a counter.
Correct.
There's no permit.
Yeah,
needed
as
for
long as
that, but they
they're
may have.
Yeah, as long as they're within the capacity for restaurants, that would be like a square footage cap. 3,500. Yeah. And then residential uses that would just be within the cutoffs in the zoning district.
What if they're a non-conforming use?
Any expansion of a non-conforming use comes back to, is subject to the requirements of the code.
Oh, so what are we talking about then?
No,
we want it?
New one comes in, they build it, and then they immediately expand later.
Yeah, we were speaking of a conforming use that could potentially go into another category.
I thought we were worried about a non-conforming use passing on to another non-conforming user.
That's
Oh,
what
that's what I'm worried about
We
both.
talked about that before. This is different.
Yeah, both are
Yeah.
a concern.
Both are a concern. Yeah, I mean, the non-conforming use is probably one of the bigger concerns with regulations that we're putting in place. How much more capacity do some already existing data centers have to have what I believe is suggested as a new data center tenants locating within an existing data center structure that could allow more megawatts to be used at that location. But because we're saying it's already non-conforming, we wouldn't be looking at whether or not they have just increased from a standard to a major. We have no public impact agreement at that point. We have the emissions that that would create. And we have the drain on our resources and increase to the utility bills that my residents pay because of the new infrastructure that will need to be built to support a grid that continues to expand to facilitate a use that is hugely unpopular in the city of St. Louis.
And that scenario is more likely with a non-conforming use than a.
It is possibly more likely with a non-conforming use simply because they are operating under very little regulations, only what would be considered in the building code for warehouses.
And I have to say, I am struggling with this idea that we can't regulate the megawattage
I agree.
because it's part of the definition.
I agree.
So how can we not use it as part of the regulation?
Well, I think it's a proxy for everything else, right?
It is, but I'm just looking back at our definitions.
Can I ask staff for clarification on this? Seemed like we were including it in the definitions for new uses, but there's no authority for the city to enforce a megawatt threshold one way or the other. Because that's under the purview of the state's regulations with it's the agreement between the provider and the owner and not the authority of the city.
I disagree.
But I guess that's not what I heard earlier.
I disagree with that.
Because what you were saying was it's more about the connections.
Right. The state says that if you are a data center with 75 megawatts or above, that you are subject to large load tariffs, which means that any connection costs that you incur, any substation that needs to be built for you to connect to the grid, those things are that your responsibility to pay for. It does not say that you have to allow 75 megawatt data centers or above in your municipality.
Right.
Should we go back to our, do we need a recess?
Spoken before. I don't know if you want to share what you were sharing with me about the two different cases here we're speaking about.
Me? Who are you talking to? Oh, okay.
Can Nick hear
All right, Nick, did you hear Ms. Keller's question?
Oh, yeah, so we can go into closed session if we want to refine this further, but just kind of
Shall
high
we?
level, I'll mention. So we can classify these restrictions based on megawattage, given that they're rationally related to the land use concerns, kind of like a proxy for the increase in intensity. The concern earlier was with an outright cap, provided the rationale was to regulate energy rates. If that's not the rationale, it's not the same issue. Regarding the applicability clause, so this regulation cannot impinge on existing uses. So for an increase in intensity, the current code has outlined that as a way that the city can limit non-conforming uses for residential properties, but not commercial or industrial. So really, I think the intent of staff in striking the applicability clause was not to limit the classifications and expansions from class to class when, for example, a permit was granted for a micro data center and then it goes into standard. That was really meant to address the constitutional concerns around impinging on current non-conforming uses.
Yeah, I think that maybe our redrafting
of this in relation to expansion, because I think there's like a fourth scenario here, which is expansions of facilities approved after these regulations are in place. Right now, it just says expansions address existing facilities. So I'm wondering, based on what Nick just described, if that item B enlargements could read full compliance is required for any enlargements or structural alterations to an existing enlargements, structural alterations, or changes in data center type, excluding with excluding existing non-conforming uses, something like that. Because if the concern is specific to facilities that are legally operating before these regulations were passed, that's that. But for going forward, it sounds like we can have this restriction. Nick, is that accurate to your analysis there?
Right.
If there's interest, we can more carefully draft that and present it. I'm just saying there's a distinction here between existing facilities that are legal and non-conforming uses and facilities that will exist in the future and then expand.
And when you say you'll more carefully draft that, at what time are we talking about?
Like 2 minutes from now. So I'm not like bumbling up here.
Yeah, you're never bumbling. You always are well
I'm often
spoken.
bumbling.
Yep. It's usually our ability to comprehend what you're saying.
That's what it is.
I think that sounds
Yeah, I'd be more interested in maybe having a little bit of a deeper conversation with Nick on this, and maybe if, I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I want to find a way to potentially do this because I think it's important. But I want to make sure we're not getting ourselves in trouble. So
Yeah, I agree it's important. I will say some cities are classifying data centers by megawattage. Most are not. So I'm just kind of restating, this is a little bit new territory, but I do agree this is a very important concept to address if we safely can. So just.
right. With that, do I have a motion to move into closed session?
well, do we want to address the last couple bits first and come
Okay,
in closed
all right.
session or no?
Up to you. You want to move on with the others or do you want to resolve this one now? There's only one more. Let's do it.
There's 11 and 6. You gotta go back to 6.
Emergency.
But that'll give them time to finish it.
I'm trying to put it together, but I don't have it done.
So who is taking the lead on 11?
Me.
Please go right ahead.
Okay, so this obviously was brought up last time, and some of these changes were incorporated into the draft in front of us. So I talked quite a bit about just kind of the air quality index. Being very mindful. I'll just also put on the record that I served on the Board of Education before coming to the Board of Aldermen. And we have a significant prevalent issue with asthma in our region and just a number of health disparities, but specifically asthma. And so the air quality index, I had made note at the last meeting that it was 100 across the board, and it was amended. The proposed draft does 50, but it amends that 50 for standard and major data centers only. And so this amendment would strike out that language and put a holistic 50 in place to apply to all data centers for the area quality index.
All right, discussion, questions?
I think a generator is a generator in terms of air quality.
Yeah.
Whether you're a micro standard or major data center, if you're testing generators on air quality days that are problematic for people of health concerns, I think that should be standardized across the board.
So
My only question,
I was gonna, my familiarity with backup generators is mostly tied to healthcare institutions. Do we hold this requirement over them? Because they also test their backup generators.
I can't speak to specifically when they do, but I know that they do. All of my research was very specific to data centers, so I don't want to speak to something I'm not the most familiar with Bosley. I don't know if that's something staff came across with. Yeah, that would be my best answer because I really don't want to say something that I'm not factually knowing. All of my focus on this was about just data centers and specifically those type of generators and what those impacts, not really tied to health institutions.
Yeah, and I guess my statement is if we're regulating a function, we need to do that equitably across uses.
I guess I would argue that it may be that the intensity from a data center is greater than in any individual. And if,
a
although I
generator?
love the,
Backup generator is a backup generator.
well, but how many
test it, you
backup
test it.
generators do you need
In a hospital?
versus a data center?
Hospitals have a lot of them.
Do they? Well, we should regulate them too.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
Is there a reason we did not choose 50 before?
Looking into like how many air quality days have been reported over the past, like not how many moderate to high air quality days were reported over the past like couple of years. And so I believe we did not change the amount for micro data centers just to give them more flexibility, thinking that they may not have as many generators. So whatever their air permitting standards were, it shouldn't be terrible. But I mean, I don't think it would be unreasonable to make 50 across the board. But I would also say that, you know, backup generators are backup generators, but data centers use like anywhere from 20 to 50 times more energy than a hospital. So that means more generators, bigger.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know, like what I can share, just kind of gathered from my own research, is just like even a micro data center that's up to 5 megawatts can still use between 3 to 5 diesel generators. And the average EPA Tier 4 backup generator, which these regulations do require, emits around 15 times pollution than a standard modern passenger car in a city driving through conditions. And so, you know, those are things that I did find very strongly in my research. And just obviously running diesel generators has high levels of kind of particulate matter and nitrogen oxides and things of that matter. And I would say to Commissioner Williams' point, I would flip it and say that we should do it equitably across the board for all for all data centers instead of just picking and choosing the two at the higher levels.
All right, are we ready for a motion on the table? Please.
I would move that we would adopt amendment number 11, which is backup generator shall not be tested on days when the St. Louis, after the words backup generator shall not be tested on days when St. Louis air quality index is above, and strike out 100 and replace it with 50.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Huffman. Call for vote?
Oh, sorry, should I say delete subsequent sentence standard and major data centers shall not test backup generators on days when AQI is above 50, just in case we need the full statement on record.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Hubman is second.
For previous role?
Any objection to previous roll? Hearing no objections, motion passes. All right, so we're going to, sorry, let's see. So we're going to enter closed session. Could I have a motion to do so, please?
So I do want to bring something up before we do that. So we talked a little bit about this language for non-conforming data centers prior to all the amendments. And so, I mean, we do have some suggestion language, which in my opinion makes it much clearer than implied. And I would like to ask the commissioners to adopt that language.
Okay.
And add it so that we are very clear on the non-conforming use versus conforming.
I think my biggest problem is does not apply to new data center tenants locating within an existing data center structure. Which basically means if you have a multiple floor building that is currently operating a data center, that they could lease some space to a data center that's going to be. So I would say it does apply to new data center tenants locating within an existing data center structure.
So what language would you change to alleviate that?
I would cross out the word not and say this provision does apply to new data center tenants locating within existing data center structures.
And your whole point there would be is a non-conforming could not lease to a new data center?
Exactly correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that could be a problem, a way to get around regulations of any of these regulations. If they find a data center that owns a building, or has a building that has excess space and they're not expanding their permit, they could lease to one that is, and without having to go through any of the regulations.
I mean, I think my role is to separate non-conforming from new. So to me, I have no problem with that.
Thank you. Yeah, so that would just be taking off the word not. So this provision does apply to new data center tenants locating within existing data center structures. Yeah, and then continue.
This, well,
Now, okay, yeah,
I was
I
gonna-
had a question about that. So if you take over the existing space in a building from a previous tenant as a data center, you're okay. Is that, Alderwoman, is that what you said, that that's okay? Or is that a new? Because to me, the non-conforming use would allow that if it happens within a year. So is that correct?
My read of this, and to Rich's again, very good point that the times we read this and the interpretations are going to be very important. Is that it would make it the initial version would make it so a new facility would not. Oh, our screen's went away. A new facility would. Oh, I hope Sterling's still here.
Yeah,
Okay, it's just the screens all went away, so I couldn't tell you were here. That's okay. That's okay. Thank you. I apologize, Commissioner Miller. Yeah, my concern is if you have a data center that is occupying a space and they have the ability, maybe through it being the owner, or the space is able to rent out more space for data centers for a new data center operator, that they would need to be in compliance with this section.
I wouldn't mind having some legal advice on this as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you
'Cause that's
can
all the-
put a regulation on a non-conforming use that's already been approved. That's the only problem I guess I have with it, thinking about it, because
Yeah.
all I'm trying to do is separate the non-conforming from what we're doing forward. And I think that if something was gonna happen like that in a process, we're putting regulations for new data centers, so they have to follow these processes. I don't know how we can adjust that to the non-conforming, because that's already done.
But
It's
wouldn't
already
they
law.
have an occupancy permit for, so one operator would have an occupancy permit and a new operator is trying to get an occupancy permit? It would be a separate occupancy permit, correct?
I would assume.
So that new occupancy permit
Well,
should be
in the-
regulated as a new occupancy permit.
Maybe it wouldn't be because it's in the existing space, which is not regulated by non-conforming.
Is it
Well,
different
and that's
business
my
operating in the
question.
same space? Yeah, this,
Yeah.
yeah, this is. Yeah, it's
So
a different business
was-
operating in the same space. You have multiple businesses operating in the same space. All of them are getting occupancy permits. You don't get one occupancy permit for the entire building, correct?
Well, and that's my concern about the language says the word structure, that it's a data center structure. Is that how they were permitted? I mean, with the whole structure was permitted as a data center? Or were there floors and specific spaces?
Says facility.
Well, I don't think they were permitted as a data center because that wasn't
That was,
a category.
They were a
so-
warehouse.
Right, it wasn't a category, so
Right. So was
are
the
we
permit
mixing
for,
apples and oranges here?
was the permit for the entire facility, the occupancy permit? And that's the key. If it is, then there's nothing we can do about it. It's already permitted.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's already a non-conforming use. I don't know how we can change anything there. Alls I'm trying to do is say we're separating the language and making it clear that those are different from what we're writing in the regulations now.
I'd like to suggest that we take a motion to move into closed session. I think we could get some advice on this subject as well as the other.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Williams.
Previous rule.
Any objection to previous rule? Hearing none?
Chair, please make the motion that cites, remember we talked about.
Oh, you got to cite the
Cite the
code
section.
number.
I'm sorry.
You gotta cite the section for us to go into closed
I'm
session.
so sorry. Thank you. I move to enter into closed session pursuant to the following: proceedings involving legal actions, causes of action or litigation, or confidential or privileged communications with attorneys as provided by section 610.021. Did you say Missouri? Forgotten how you say that. And or section 610.021 Rismo. Thank you.
Second.
Previous roll.
So please, non-commission members and non-staff, please leave the room as we enter closed session. Have we gotten them all done except these two?
Six, and then. Amendment six, are you there?
Wait, there was the other one.
You all are troopers.
Whatever the other one was. 10.
Y'all are troopers. We were saying y'all are troopers.
All right. Let's go to the last two amendments. I have a motion on amendment number 6.
Yeah. So earlier we talked about an amendment 6 regarding renewable thresholds. And this amendment number 6 gets to the spirit of that, which we had introduced before and not had a motion on and not voted on. But this amendment number 6 is on the screen in front of us. Basically, before an occupancy permit is issued, the facility shall demonstrate their ability to achieve and maintain a minimum of 50% of their anticipated annual electricity use from renewable energy through the electric utilities renewable energy programs, PSC approved large load renewable energy programs, clean energy riders, and or on-site and or behind the meter renewable energy generation and storage, including participation in virtual power plant programs. No more than 50% of this requirement may be fulfilled through local recs. So I would move that we adopt amendment number 6.
Second.
Sorry, second was
Me.
Commissioner Garmendia. All right. Call for vote?
Alderman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sonnier,
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler,
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Vanton,
Nay.
and Chair Boaz.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. You pull up the language for the next amendment, proposed amendment? Would you like to introduce
You want
this
me
one as
this
well?
one? Okay.
Please.
So in an effort to understand some of the language around expansions and expansions of existing non-conforming uses and or non-conforming structures, we wanted to make sure that we were getting to how compliance would work for both of those options. So putting some more definitions in here. New facility, full compliance is required for new data centers. For expansions, full compliance is required for any enlargements, structural alterations, or changes in data center classifications, i.e. micro, standard, or major. C, expansions of existing non-conforming uses and or non-conforming structures. Full compliance is required for any enlargements or structural alterations of existing non-conforming structures and or non-conforming uses as defined in the section. Enlargement shall include an increase in backup generator capacity. And then for existing non-conforming facilities and previously approved facilities, the remainder is unchanged. This is to more clearly understand what happens when a data center expands. One of the concerns we discussed is a data center moving from one category to another, and making sure that it's triggering the regulations in each of those categories of classifications, and then making sure that if a existing non-conforming use or structure is doing this enlargement or structural alterations, that they then have to come into compliance with the regulations as well. And one of those ways that we would be able to know that is the increase in backup generator capacity at the facility.
Move to adopt revised amendment number 10.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Garmendia, second by Alderwoman Sanye. Call for vote.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley.
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler.
No.
Commissioner Garmendia.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubin.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Vice Chair Banton.
Aye.
And Chair Boaz.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
All right. Any other issues we need to discuss to make changes or just better understand the overall?
So the amendments you looked at were submitted and given to you in paper form over the last 2 days. Any other commissioners have thoughts about any other amendments you'd like to make to what Miriam had proposed to us?
All right, that's what I meant to say.
I just had one clarifying question on the Ameren recommendations and specifically regarding some of their definitions. I don't know if I know these came in super late, and to be honest, it's a little bit above my head about what all this somewhat means, but I just want to clarify with staff that if any of this prompted any discussion or thoughts from you on any definitions that might need to be changed for anything.
We did think some of the
Use the mic.
one that need to review the notes on this. We didn't have anything drafted though.
I did think there probably could be some clarification simply to the maximum power demand definition that better integrates the contract concept.
Yeah.
Maximum power demand could be defined maybe as the maximum contracted energy capacity. Well, let me work on drafting something and then come right back. This would not change the meaning or intent, but it could
Change terminology.
correct. Yeah.
Doing great.
Maybe there's more to discuss.
Any other issues that people want to bring up? Any amendments you want to propose? No?
Not necessarily an amendment that I think one of the most important things that changed recently is the acknowledgement that generators should not be used for general operations. Do we think that's strong enough? The worded strongly enough now? Or is there a need to define emergency operations?
Great question.
Yeah, I
Mm.
don't
I
have the
feel
answer.
like, I think I've looked up like, how do we define emergency for the city? And it's just whenever the mayor says.
Ah,
So I'm not sure we have great precedent to work from with like defining emergency and like who gets to decide.
so do you think the language in there now that specifies it cannot be used for, it can't be used
Yeah.
for regular
I think we
Commissioner
looked
Miller,
at
go
that.
ahead.
I think we looked at that last meeting and we specifically outlawed, they can't use it for peak shaving or for general operational use. It's only for temporary emergency use. I thought that was clarified. I can't remember what section, but that was a
Yeah, we're just
question.
talking about whether emergency is defined or not. Like if that is sufficient or any further definition is needed.
If it says temporary somewhere, that's a good.
No one else is concerned about that language? I'm sure staff hasn't had a chance to think about it because they're working on something else.
I think we're open to ideas on that one. We tried every which way we could to kind of close any loopholes, but if there are other ideas.
I don't, that's the problem. I don't have another idea. I just am worried that it's,
And I assume you pulled this language from looking at other cities' examples and.
We cobbled together the best we could find and combined it all to cover all the bases.
Why don't we flag that as something we look at again in 2 years?
Good point.
Unplanned disruptions or, unplanned power disruptions or,
Or failure.
Complete, utter.
Yeah.
yeah, it is something that, could be further defined at the Board of Aldermen if we have time between now and the committee hearing to come back and
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not something so dire in the bill that I feel like,
yeah.
we need to.
In the back. I think it would be good to, we'd have a more informed discussion what constitutes emergency if data center operators actually had to put a record, like this is the reason why we had to use our backup generator. So that would be helpful. And then we do a look back and decide, okay,
Right.
relying
on self-reporting.
yeah. So, but that would be the case, that would be the case for this, right?
Right.
Because otherwise we'd have to have someone like go out there and say, yeah, that's an emergency,
Right.
but some kind of record. I guess, are we asking at all for a record of how often they use their backup generators?
Yeah, so their air permit has that all outlined in it, and
Okay.
that is publicly available online. And then also the language in here, I believe the NSPS. Right now, doesn't, or the part 3 requirements, if it's diesel, that does only apply to emergency backup generators. So there's air permitting compliance within as well for emergency backup. So it doesn't even apply to generators that would be used regularly.
Got it.
Anything else on that? Are we ready to move back to maximum power demand?
Yeah, so the potentially revised definition that is informed by Amron's comment is above. Maximum power demand means the facility's highest level of connected electricity load for critical IT and building systems and equipment as set by a single contract with an electric service provider. The term single we put forward to prevent daisy chaining type of possibility through subdivision of a parcel.
Does this account for on-site or behind the meter renewable, power source feeding it as well?
I believe so.
Okay.
So do you need a motion to change this definition then?
Are you comfortable with that change?
You explain single agreement again?
Single contract instead of.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, this
I
was
think
a-
it
this
was
was a deep
so
cut.
they don't like sub meter out under like different names. So then that way it's like one building, that's one source of power, one customer versus trying to say, oh, we have multiple customers in here. You know, that way we're getting like the full picture of what that whole building is operating at, because there's like,
So shouldn't it say the opposite then?
Well, should it, yeah, could it say, instead of trying to say, we gotta have just one contract, can we just say by the collective contracts?
Yeah, aggregate. Yeah, aggregate.
Or,
I think the other possibility we're trying to envision is the idea of like two standard data centers going in right next to each other, but operating under like by the same developer, but in separate buildings and separate parcels, but operating under a single agreement with Ameren that might allow a much larger power demand.
Ameren do that for properties, different buildings, different addresses?
I mean, like, we have, the city has one utility bill with, you know, all different addresses, so I think having one contract to know like what the full picture is versus like, because then we have the different thresholds, right? So this way it's kind of tied together, so we get that full picture.
You're saying you want to require them to have one single agreement.
The intent was to get the full picture of one agreement with Ameren that would be associated with a whole range of potential infrastructure upgrades and potential new, like, you know, energy demand, so that we could evaluate the full picture of a development rather than pieces of it. Other application requirements that are now included would help with that too. The interconnection study agreement, if provided, would provide that information. Interconnection study agreement does or doesn't apply for things under 50 megawatts.
Is there a reason why we're not using the recommended language of executed service agreement?
Maybe not a good one. We had a lot to respond to and review from these comments.
Yeah, she's suggesting adopt.
ESAs could get below 50. Not, the ESAs are, I think, common terminology for Ameren and thinking about large load customers. Later in their comments, they pointed out that for users below 50 megawatts, they don't execute electric service agreements. They would have some other form of an agreement.
Okay.
That was presented as like the rationale for why they thought the threshold should be 50 instead of 30 between standard and majors. But we believe that there's still agreements set for larger users. They just may not be an ESA per se.
Well, then their advice wasn't very consistent.
All right. With that in mind, any other comments on this particular change? Or questions? Oh, I said, any other comments or questions on this particular language? Nope. All right. Could I have a motion?
I move to alter the definition of maximum power demand to maximum power demand means the facility's highest level of connected electricity load for critical IT and building systems and equipment as set by a single contract with an electric service provider.
Wait a second. Excellent. Second by Commissioner Garmendia. Call for vote.
Aye.
Commissioner Bradley.
Aye.
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 Commissioner Hubbard.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller.
I can't hear you.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Banton,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz,
Aye.
and the motion passes.
Right. Well, I believe we have exhausted everything. No, what?
Let's vote out the whole thing.
Let's vote out the whole thing, as she says. All right. Do you have a recommended motion?
Indeed, I do.
Table it for another minute.
As amended.
Prepared.
Right.
Wait for.
The recommendation is that the Plan Commission finds the zoning text change defining and regulating data centers as amended to be in conformity with the city's comprehensive plan and recommends approval to the Board of Aldermen.
All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Who was, so it was Commissioner Hubman, and who was the second?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I thought you said second.
Commissioner
You were
Fowler.
asking for a second.
Oh, yes. Commissioner Fowler. All right, call for vote.
Alderwoman Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye, still not in the room. Commissioner Bradley,
Aye.
Commissioner Fowler.
Aye.
Commissioner Garmendia,
Aye.
Commissioner Hubman,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Miller,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Vice Chair Banton,
Aye.
and Chair Boaz,
Aye.
and the motion passes.
While the slide is up, I want to make a comment about all the hard work the planning staff has done over the last year and a half. to Get a city's comprehensive plan that is substantive and we should measure it. Good,
And what's that? Thank you for all of your expertise and your guidance and your wisdom. You've really, we would never be this far without this team that we have.
Well, and thanks to a lot of members of the community who lent their expertise, some of whom have stuck it out here and maybe online. I can't see who all is online, so.
Thanks to you as well. All right. Shall we move on to the Project Connect Neighborhood Plan update? Jonathan, still with us?
Or Jonathan. Well, we had some internal conversation that maybe that update can move to a future
Oh, okay.
agenda if the commission's okay with that. It's something I could quickly provide, but Project Connect staff who were in attendance are no longer
And
here.
I was thinking you wanted to move the zoning upgrade to the next meeting. We'll move.
Or a
them
future meeting. Options there would be at a future standing meeting or for us to work with the commission and schedule a work session
up. Excellent.
focused on that topic.
Okay. I don't think anyone will argue with you. Thank you.
But I can send around the slides, which are informative.
Okay, great. Don, Executive Director's
The
report.
Zoop update,
That's what we just talked about.
you just got that. Who's the project manager for the Zoop update?
All of us. Well,
I'm just trying to remind people, incredible workload. It's as I make my executive director's report, which is our next. I'm going to tell you, Alicia, have you seen your 9/14 email from the mayor's office? Giving you an assignment? Yeah. I just will tell you, my executive director's report is the staff that you see, you experience and works with the rest of the community of planning and urban design are hardworking, talented. And one of the things I mentioned at the budget hearing is one of the things that gives them some joy, and gives us substance to help do things to best practices is the degree of things, professional organizations we have memberships in, travel that we do to go and find the best practices and relationships we have across the country. And with that said, my executive director's report was just to say, staff's doing a great job, but I start to get worried about burnout and those types of things. So with that,
Fair.
I think it's TikTok. It's time to go.
Right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Previous roll.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
It's truly a joy